Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Was Sent Back in Time by Kurama. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The teenager with the blonde hair was struggling to stay upright under the moon. Even the great Kyuubi himself had run his course and was no longer able to fight. Why did things have to end this way? Sniff, something's wrong. As he collapsed to his knees in a pool of his own blood, the young blonde thought, I don't want this to happen. I just wanted to live in peace with everyone, to have everyone be happy. I failed them all. The scene was unlike anything he had ever seen in the worst of nightmares, and he could hardly raise his head to see it. The young blonde's friends were being killed one by Obito, the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, and the recently proclaimed Rikudo Sennin, who was piercing their hearts with an odd black mass that surrounded his body. From the youngest genin to the cages themselves, he killed them all without exception. It was now a one-sided massacre rather than a battle. They were chopped down with no mercy. Not even for those who had tried to escape. Obito kept watching as Naruto struggled to get to his feet before tumbling back to the ground. He had no desire to feel sorry for the young shinobi, but he thought the boy should be told why. He didn't feel sorry for him. All he wanted was for someone else to experience some of his suffering, to feel the same emotions as him, and to live his life. He began to descend toward Naruto, kneeling down to whisper the child's ear, "This is the fate of those who would try to stop me. I already told you that you couldn't protect them. I gave you all more than one chance to avoid this bloodshed. But in your ignorance you blindly marched them all to their dooms. Now submit and be reborn in my infinite Tsukuyomi. All your pain and suffering will." In a final attempt to kill him, two Kunoichi leapt at Obito, cutting him short. His Rinnegan gave him a complete field of perfect vision, so he didn't even have to turn around. He was aware that, in addition to attacking his back, the young shinobi with the dark purple hair and the appearance of the Byakugan would attempt to tear his heart to pieces with a chakra-infused palm strike. Permeating from the purple-haired shinobi was a sickening scent of lavender that made him shudder. Additionally, he was aware that the other pink-haired, teal-eyed shinobi would attempt to grab Naruto and flee as soon as the purple-haired girl's attack failed. This would be a stupid move that, at best, would only postpone the inevitable. As Sakura made contact with Naruto, Hinata screamed, "Grab Naruto and run, Sakura," and threw all of her chakra into her attack, which was directly aimed at Obito's heart. When Obito transformed the black fluid surrounding him into jagged spikes, piercing both of their hearts and taking their lives before their brains could even realize they had failed, he only said, "Utterly pathetic." Like the thousands who had perished before them, both Kunoichi fell face down into pools of their own blood. Naruto could only watch in horror as the person who had told him she loved him was once again killed in front of him. He jumped to Hinata, tears streaming down his face, but he couldn't get to her before she fell to the ground. Naruto fell to the ground after Obito gave him a quick chop to the neck, where he met the only person who had ever shown him true love. "After all, I suppose I was simply too weak. All of them were correct. I am a failure." Hinata slowly gave in to the darkness of regrets, thinking, "I never even got to talk to Naruto-kun again." Naruto stood on the ground and looked around. He saw the remains of everyone he had ever known as well as some people he had only recently met. Just as he had made up his mind to go back to Konoha, he also saw Sasuke and his group lying dead by Obito's hands. His mind then wandered to the Biju, who had put their faith in Naruto to vanquish the Jubi and bring world peace. Obito sneered as he started to lift himself above the ground, sure that the boy would soon bleed out. Well, it would seem that there are no other distractions left to deal with. As much fun as this has all been, I must now finish what I started. Emphasizing the moon that was now high in the night sky above the desolate wasteland where the Fourth Shinobi War had just ended, Obito clapped his hands together and started to shape all the chakra he could. "After all these years, I will finally be able to see Rin, to hold her, to tell her how much she meant no means to me," Obito said, shedding a tear of joy from his right eye. Having shaped his chakra, he yelled, "Infinite Suk! No, I will not allow this to occur." Naruto screamed into his head, "I can't. I believe I may know how to get around this. The idea of spending the rest of my life stuck in an eternal genjutsu doesn't really appeal to me." When Naruto turned around, he saw a weakened fox. "Kyuubi, I'm glad you're okay, Kami. I believed I had also lost you." Kurama forced a tiny smile. "Good, Kami." Naruto, "Relax, we'll both be lost forever if you don't focus right now. Would you accept it if I told you that I might be able to help us get out of this situation?" Naruto used the back of his sleeve to wipe the tears from his eyes. "I apologize. Just do whatever it takes to return things to their previous state. Just return everything to how it was. I don't care what happens to me." The fox laughed. "Good, that mindset is really helpful. Listen up. I was a member of the Jubi. A different one from the monster floating up there. long before I was sealed inside of UI. Kurama gave a single shake of his head. We are smart, and we didn't just indiscriminately destroy everything that stood in our way. You have to realize, Naruto, that we were never and still aren't evil creatures who seek destruction, so it was understandable that it hurt us to witness people murdering one another over something as trivial as wealth or land. Naruto simply acknowledged the veracity of the fox's statement while glancing at the ground. He had witnessed all of humanity's vices throughout his life, including lust, anger, and greed, which were sacrificed for the glory of a symbol on a tiny metal plate that was adorned by numerous shinobi or for little patches of scorched earth. After our meeting with the Rikudo Sennin, we all agreed that we ought to be imprisoned inside the sage so that he could harness our strength and establish a new, peaceful world. He developed all ninjutsu and genjutsu after the sealing, advancing our understanding of chakra globally. This heightened human fervor rather than bringing an end to the wars. A look of desolate abandonment flashed across Kurama's face, and he sighed. However, that is a tale for a different time. I would naturally have more memory than the Hachibi, and so on and so forth down to the Ichibi, since the Jubi's knowledge was divided proportionally based on our power after that. A strange jutsu that would enable the ninja to compress the area into a tiny area is one thing I do recall. Theoretically, adding more chakra could make the tiny area so dense that it would form a tiny rift, a crack, if you will. That would enable one to pass through that wrinkle and travel back in time. Apart from that prick up there, the Rikudo Sennin, and of course, no one would ever possess the chakra required to accomplish such a feat. Though I doubt he could figure out the jutsu without my help. After that, Kurama lowered his head until his eye met Naruto's. So, Naruto, may I ask you a question? Would you be willing to swap everything and attempt to change the future by traveling back in time? The blonde hesitated for a few moments, considering his options, but eventually he was only able to laugh. That sounded so cliché, Kurama. This made a very angry fox growl low, but as I've already stated, I would stop at nothing to make this hellhole different. The fox simply smiled and placed one finger with claws on Naruto's chest. I'll use some chakra before we begin to stop the bleeding and bring your heart back together. This is just a temporary solution, but it should be sufficient for what we need to do. After just a few seconds, Kurama let go of his claw. There, let's do this now. I'll try my best to guide it to form the rift, and you'll shape as much of our chakra as you can. HNN. Naruto felt Kurama begin the jutsu while still in his head, straining as hard as he could and sucking out more chakra than he ever imagined. There was a chill that went up his arms and down his legs. Darkness crept into his peripheral vision. As his vision grew hazy, his thoughts started to wander, and he experienced a strange but calming feeling. Remain strong, you brat. I'm going to make it my personal mission to haunt your ass for the rest of eternity, Kami, so don't you dare give in. Even as his eyelids started to close from exhaustion, Naruto managed a feeble laugh. Hey, never thought you would care about me that much, he said, his voice growing quieter and his words becoming slurred. Kurama's fur-lined eyes started to well up with tears as he realized that he might lose the only host who would not despise him for simply existing. You stupid brat, I don't. Naruto rolled his eyes and grinned. You were never good at lying, Kurama. They both stared at a hole big enough for them to pass through after Kurama abruptly sent a shock of his remaining chakra into Naruto to bring him back from the Shinigami. Naruto asked the obvious question after a rather awkward silence, is that? Kurama interrupted his host. Indeed, it is our pass to the past. As he gazed into the abyss in front of him, the blonde scratched the back of his head. But where are we going to end up? Not even I am aware of that. We would have to sacrifice everything and take a chance that we could stop this from ever happening again, as I mentioned. Naruto let out a sigh. All right, let's do it. Let's go. There's the Naruto I know. Without hesitation, they crawled through the hole in front of them and soon found themselves plunging into the shadowy abyss. They traveled through space and time, marveling at the surrounding universe as they observed its creation and demise. After what felt like an eternity of falling, they eventually saw the other end as nothing more than a tiny rip in the universe's fabric. They heard familiar screams and terrified cries as they got closer and closer, which were clearly coming from a battlefield. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see his father and mother impaled on a Kyuubi claw as they crashed through the tear. After realizing exactly where he had come from, Naruto noticed that tears were uncontrollably streaming down his cheeks. Naruto listened to his parents' final words to him while he watched. In his final moments, Minato Namikaze whispered, barely audible, Naruto, just do everything your mother just said. I apologized to Naruto. I never imagined that we would reach this point in time, when I was still a bitter, vindictive bitch. The barrier surrounding the ritual site started to dissolve after a short while, allowing outsiders to finally enter. With tears in his eyes, Naruto watched as Hiruzen Sarutobi, also known as the third Hokage, approached his now dead successor and his wife. He prayed silently for the two young heroes as he slowly walked up to Minato and gently closed her still open eyelids, curious as to why the infant had stopped crying just moments earlier. He then walked silently up to the baby and gathered Naruto in his arms. Hiruzen glanced at his security personnel. Take Minato and Kushina to the Hokage office so we can prepare a proper funeral for them. What you have just witnessed is now the most dangerous secret we will have to keep, especially for this little one. And if any one of you tells a soul of these events, you better be sure there will be hell to pay. Furthermore, I want one of you to gather the council for an emergency meeting. Now go. Just before they left, Hiruzen had a final thought, and make sure that bastard Danzo is there. Having to decide how to respond to this unexpected turn of events, Hiruzen took the young blonde and started walking toward the council chambers. He was aware that some council members, like Danzo, would prefer to train the boy to be a killing machine for the benefit of Konoha, while others would demand the boy's immediate execution. Tears started streaming down Naruto's cheeks once more, and he simply closed his eyes. I never held this against you, Kurama, so it's okay. However, it doesn't make things any simpler. I am aware that you have improved over the years that we have been together. Right now, my only option is to follow our plan and work to save our world. Arigato. I believe I should now go over the repercussions of us inhabiting your childlike body once more. Repercussions? What are you saying? Why would there be repercussions? First of all, we are now living in a body that once contained a soul. It's not like the you from this period would simply vanish into thin air. All we did was take control of this body's consciousness. He may actually emerge in due time. It is simply too young to comprehend that its body has been taken. What does that imply for all of my jutsu and our prior chakra reserves? Then, I don't want to consider learning the Rasen Shuriken once more. Our vast chakra reserves have started to blend with this body. As far as I can tell, it's similar to packing a massive lake into a container that can only accommodate a few puddles. This body won't burst from the massive influx of chakra just yet because, fortunately for us, the container is so young that the chakra coils can expand at an amazing rate. So all of my old chakra is still there. Sigh. Yes, Naruto, I would say that at this moment, you have the chakra reserves of at least a cage, if not more. Remember that the coils will keep growing because this body hasn't finished growing yet, which will further expand your chakra reserves. Is the seal still present? Then, if I attempted to draw out your chakra as well, what would that mean? Yes, the seal remains in place, but you can still access my chakra and enter both Kyuubi and chakra mode. However, if you'd like, you could also transform into the Jinchuriki form for increased agility and, well, a more savage battle. Yes, that is amazing. It's unbelievable that, despite only being a day old, I still have so much strength. I'm eager to. Hiruzen's sudden halt as he entered his office and headed to the meeting room interrupted him. Naruto was reminded by the Hokage's expression of the serious events of that evening and the number of people who had lost their lives to stop Obito. Pay close attention, Naruto. This is your only opportunity to learn the truth about what truly transpired that evening. Naruto simply responded with a grunt. Hiruzen was happy to see that everyone was present when he walked in the door. Sure, some members of the civilian council weren't there, but he reasoned that since this was a shinobi situation, it would probably be best if they weren't. Danzo got up and began interrogating the retired Hokage as soon as Hiruzen entered holding Naruto. Would you mind telling us what this is all about? Unless you didn't know, we have more important things to do than just sit around talking. The Kyuubi could come back to the village any moment and begin the attack anew now. Where is Minato? He should be here to regroup and try and stop the Kyuubi. Hiruzen glared at Danzo. This was no ordinary look. It was filled with the most malevolent and murderous intent the young root commander had ever experienced. Danzo was certain that Hiruzen would have been stabbed in the heart right then and there if he had desired it, but as soon as the glance started, it ended when Hiruzen spoke quietly while gazing down into the eyes of his former successor's lone surviving child with the love and care of a father. Minato and his wife are dead. They gave their lives to seal the Kyuubi inside this child, thus saving our village. Unfortunately, this also means that their legacy here in my arms will have to be kept a secret from everyone, lest Naruto become a target. This child is now doomed to be loathed and hated for a reason he had no control of, and while he should be hailed as a savior, he will be hated and avoided like a leper. The man's words left everyone staring blankly. To be honest, they were too stunned to speak. It was quite some time before anyone spoke, and ironically, it was the same individual who abruptly opened the meeting, but this time, Danzo made sure to talk respectfully and in turn. This truly is a dark day. We have lost many fine shinobi, along with our Hokage and his wife. We can't wallow in misery while our village is in disarray. Someone has to take command, so we must now choose the next Hokage, and Shikaku. The leader of the Nara clan and perhaps the most intelligent and astute man in the room, interrupted him. I nominate Hiruzen, seeing as how he already has experience as a Hokage. It is the only rational choice left to us. We can't upset the already confused state we find ourselves in. How does everyone vote? As nearly everyone, including Hyuga Hiyashi, Uchiha Fugaku, Aburame Shibi, Yamanaka Inoichi, Akamichi Choza, Inazuka Sume, and of course Nara Shikaku, nodded in agreement. Hiruzen turned to look around. Danzo and several of the civilian council members who were clearly influenced by Danzo were the only ones who appeared to be unhappy with this result. In addition to our Hokage's recent death, a significant number of our shinobi were also killed, and now you're vying for the role? As he observed the man fuming in his chair, Hiruzen pondered. I reluctantly accept, only for the sake of our village. My first order as Hokage is that the events discussed tonight are to stay in this room. The fewer people who know about this boy the better. If his father can't protect him, then by Kami I sure as hell will try. On that note, I want no fewer than 2 Anbu to watch this boy at all times, to protect him and keep him safe from other villages. Kakashi, come in here. A man wearing a fox mask entered at the Hokage's command and bowed to the new Hokage right away. Kakashi, I want you to take this boy to the orphanage in Konoha. I want you to then get a sizable wardrobe for him along with at least 250,000 ryo from the Sarutobi treasury. This money will be put towards an apartment for the child, but in the meantime he will stay at the orphanage until I order otherwise. Am I clear? Before removing the child from the Hokage's embrace and leaving the room right away to carry out the Hokage's orders, the Anbu said, Crystal. Watching Kakashi go, Hiruzen sighed. Shikaku leaned over to whisper in his ear as he was doing it. Are you sure that is wise? The villagers will eventually figure it out, and his life will be hell if he has to depend on others during his childhood. With a nod of agreement, Hiruzen said, Hi, that it will be, but that is precisely why it must be done. Minato wouldn't want his child to be kept from his village, locked away in some distant place like a demon. Besides, it is only temporary until I can find him his own place. Then I will have someone I trust watch over him and take care of him until such a time as he is capable of taking care of himself. Hiruzen then turned to speak to the other members of the council. Now that that is over, I hereby adjourn this meeting. We must now rebuild Konoha before other countries hear of our temporary weakness. The council echoed, Hi Hokage-sama, before filing out of the meeting room. Returning to Kakashi, the fact that they are abandoning my sensei's son to an orphanage is unbelievable. They are little more than scum who underfeed the local kids in order to keep the extra cash they receive from the village. After I go to Obito's grave every day, I'll have to make sure to go see Naruto. I don't have any more faith in those individuals than I can give them. As he carried out the Hokage's instructions and delivered the child to the orphanage where he would, temporarily, stay, the Anbu continued to mutter to himself before departing to carry out the remainder of his orders. Kakashi gave the staff some blunt warnings about what would happen if Naruto was mistreated in any way. The sight of Kakashi taking off his mask and exposing his Sharingan to further cement his threat sent shivers down the spines of many of the employees. As he recapped the night's events, Naruto thought, wow, although I was aware of the old man Hokage's kindness toward me, it was not this great. I suppose I wasn't as isolated as I had assumed. Even as a baby, Kakashi-sensei still cared about me enough to do everything in his power to keep me safe at the orphanage. I guess you're right, but it's just the 2 of us from now on until you graduate from the academy. Please note that I will not allow my container to be the last dobi this time. Before you even get to the academy, you'll be a polite and, hopefully, educated shinobi. I will therefore work on your IQ, beginning with kanji and basic algebra, until you are able to move freely to practice taijutsu and ninjutsu. We'll go up from there gradually. Since I am the strongest of all the tailed beasts, my host won't be some village idiot, and I won't have another humiliating rerun of the Chunin exams where you stared at a blank page for an entire hour. I understand the intelligence dobi connection, but how in the hell am I related to math and kanji? And here I believe that becoming Hokage was your dream. No matter how strong they are, I don't think the council will elect someone who can't even perform simple math to be Hokage. Everything from the village's economic situation to the creation of new trade agreements will fall under your purview. All right, you're right. When do we begin your ambitious plan, then? Tomorrow. I don't have the patience or the energy to start teaching you tonight. Rest well, kid. After doing that jutsu not too long ago, we are both exhausted. The chakra we were able to integrate into our systems from the new body we are in is the only reason we haven't yet experienced mental collapse, even though we are both on the verge of chakra exhaustion. Hello, Kurama. Kurama-sensei, is that? No way. Sigh, all right. I suppose it would be strange if we became all formal. 5 years later. Why are we repeating this, Naruto, damn it. Don't ask me to repeat myself. Pay attention. After a loud growl, Kurama resumed. Since he could tell the young blonde was barely listening, we should use this time to practice all forms of jutsu, not just futon, wind jutsu. As I previously stated, although you are quite skilled in futon, you will become an even more proficient shinobi if you can train in all the other elements. However, I believe that in order to use an element, you had to have a connection to it. Then explain to me how Kakashi was able to employ jutsu in multiple contexts. You make a valid point, however, you still haven't given me a clear explanation of this. I believe that I would be able to learn more about ninjutsu and genjutsu if I studied with you for 5 years. Don't imply that I broke my promise, just listen and keep quiet. Given your proficiency with futon, could you please explain the outcome of using your futon? Rasen Shuriken against a Kaden. Fire jutsu. That possessed only roughly half of your Rasen Shuriken's power? That would need to be an extremely powerful Kaden in order to compete with my Rasen Shuriken, but I suppose they would balance each other out. Exactly. However, a Sweden, water jutsu, that had only half the power of the said Kaden could cancel out that same Kaden, and thus would only need roughly a quarter of the power that your Rasen Shuriken needed. Have you gotten it yet? Yeah, I suppose so. This is still quite dull. Impudent little. Anyhow, as I mentioned earlier, one could use a jutsu from each element, but it is impossible to have an affinity for all of them, as in your case with futon jutsus. The affinity of that specific school will be stronger due to the individual shinobi being proficient in all of the elements would increase your overall jutsu usage by a factor of several, and your regular Rasengan would be slightly below that of a Rasen Shuriken. Some of the best things I've ever heard are those. That would only be possible if you were to master every elemental jutsu to a level that is roughly mid-Chunin, which is probably beyond your current capabilities. Rather, I believe you should concentrate on mastering the low to mid-Chunin level. You ought to be able to finish that before you receive your academy degree. In relation to that, I need to discuss the academy with you. How about it? The question is, how many times did you fail it? Knowing you, you would prefer to be in the same class as your little friends, but if you were to start over, you should be able to complete everything in a year. You make a valid point, but I don't care for the way you call them, little. It seems a bit cruel to me. Apart from that, I believe I have a solution. But yes, that does pose a problem. I would simply wait to enroll in the academy. I will simply enroll in the academy the year everyone else is expected to graduate and then sweep them all away because, as I recall, admission to the academy is a decision made by each individual after they reach a specific age. It will be enjoyable. Whatever appeals to you. Let's start the training now. Do 100 laps around Konoha first. What the devil? I was aware of your plans, but they had nothing to do with ninjutsu or genjutsu. A strong body leads to a strong mind, which in turn leads to a strong chakra. Get moving now, or I won't teach you anything at all. Oh, all right. Naruto sensed that a number of Anbu were running alongside him as soon as he started. Hey Kurama. I knew already. This only adds to its intrigue. Until you can get rid of them, you have to outrun them or the deal is off for the day. I truly despise you. Emotions are reciprocal. Naruto's training thus started in earnest over the following few years. As promised, Kurama refused to teach his host anything for a while since he couldn't outrun the Anbu sent by the Hokage to keep an eye on him. Kurama would then have Naruto establish a training regimen after Naruto eventually outran the shinobi, much to their chagrin. They would not really pursue him, choosing instead to leave Konoha's demon to the mercy of whoever he encountered, but each day would start with laps around Konoha to once more lose his Anbu escort. As Naruto got faster, the routine would be extended by another 100 laps every few months. To make it more challenging, he was not allowed to use any form of jutsu or chakra to strengthen his muscles. Instead, he had to run like everyone else to increase his leg strength and endurance. He would simply call it a day to play with the other kids in Konoha and enjoy something like childhood during the first few days after the training schedule was increased because he was too exhausted to begin training with Kurama. However, the threats and shady looks never seemed to stop. After completing about 500 laps as part of his training regimen, he was told to buy chakra weights for his arms and ankles. To Naruto's annoyance, the weights were then increased rather than more laps. After the running, if he had the energy to continue, he would immediately begin training his ninjutsu, being cautious to avoid the Anbu's prying eyes by either losing them in the forest or ducking into a sewer. Before long, the Anbu would deliberately cease observing Naruto and eventually abandon him completely. Since Naruto was a futon user and appeared to struggle with this particular jutsu, the ninjutsu training would typically consist of some basic Doden, earth, jutsu. After that, it would enter Kaden, where Naruto would have greater success. He would initially hardly be able to create more than a tiny ball of fire with his Kaden, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Great Fireball. But over the course of a month, he improved to the point where he could easily create a flaming fireball that was several meters in diameter. He relocated to Sweden after Kaden, where he had the greatest success outside of Futon. After less than a week of training, he was able to use his Sweden Daibakufu no Jutsu, great waterfall technique, to summon enormous waves from pure chakra, just like the Naidame Hokage before him. He then started working on other more advanced techniques. Following his triumph with Sweden, he turned his attention to Raiden, lightning jutsu, which, after months of rigorous training, developed into a palmed electrical strike that could temporarily incapacitate an adversary. Though this used up a lot of Naruto's chakra reserves, he could pierce his opponent if he concentrated his chakra to high enough levels. This would allow him to use his amazing speed to make his attacks stronger. Much like Kakashi's Reikiri, he would, of course, also practice his Futon methods, developing some while reworking others. Naruto's hair grew long down to the middle of his back, keeping its spiky texture as he grew older and eventually stopped getting it cut. Whenever he chose to train with Kaden, he made sure to tie his hair neatly behind his back after an unfortunate incident in which a significant amount of it went up in smoke. Although he wasn't the tallest boy his age, Naruto was very happy that he wasn't the shortest because of the forced growth caused by having so much chakra as a baby. Even though Naruto's eyes would never be able to match those of a full-fledged Sharingan, he would still be able to notice small details as his mind and senses sharpened as he and the Kyuubi grew closer in their shared body. Because of his rigorous training, which left Guy and Lee speechless, he was also more muscular than any child his age should have been. Additionally, Naruto's thinking became more collected, and instead of diving right in, he carefully considered the circumstances he found himself in. When Naruto sensed a sizable crowd, primarily men, stumbling out of the neighborhood bar, his training with the henge proved useful on multiple occasions. The majority of the time, the mob would turn on Naruto in an attempt to let out their frustrations by beating the child mercilessly, but they were never able to locate him. They frequently saw an elderly man with orange hair and numerous facial piercings emerge from the nearest alleyway and move away from the crowd. The only thing Kurama managed to do was persuade Naruto to slightly alter his attire, though he continued to wear orange. At this point, he was wearing a black shirt with the bright red Uzumaki crest on the back. Orange flames were streaming up the shirt from the bottom, stopping around his stomach. Additionally, his pants were black. It had taken the Kyuubi a few more days to persuade Naruto that orange was not appropriate for a ninja, and as a result, they were able to prevent Naruto from having orange stripes sewn up the sides of his pants. By the age of 11, Naruto was prepared to enroll in the academy and show off his newly acquired abilities to everyone, particularly Sasuke and the other members of his class who had previously dismissed him as a simple idiot. Nearly giddy with anticipation, Naruto approached the ninja academy. "Slow down, Kit. There is nothing you can do to expose us. The other brats might avoid you out of fear or, worse, tell a higher up if they learn about your power." As he pushed the academy doors open, Naruto grinned broadly and said, "Don't worry, Kurama, this is going to be a blast." Naruto felt as if he had been struck by deja vu as he walked through the doors. To him, it all seemed so familiar. He moved slowly toward his intended classroom, ignoring the Chunin instructor's obvious glares as he went by. He met their glares with a smile that was so enthusiastic and happy that it made them double take. When he arrived at his classroom, he threw open the door with a loud thud and strode confidently inside, aware that everyone was clearly watching him. The appearance of the young blonde caused several gasps. His hair, which was still spiky, now reached his mid-back. His jawline was further characterized by the fact that his face was devoid of any fat from his rigorous training. But what really caught my attention were his azure eyes, which even the most jaded Sasuke fangirl couldn't resist gazing into. Iruka got to his feet when his newest pupil arrived. "Ah, it seems like this is the newest addition to our class. He has opted to hold off on joining the academy until this year, and we have decided to put him in the same year as all of you now. If everyone would please help me give a warm welcome to Uzu." As Naruto decided to complete his introduction, he was interrupted in the middle of his statement. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Remember it, because someday I will be the Hokage, and as Hokage I will protect both my village and my friends." With the exception of one student who wished he could just do it, most of the class rolled their eyes at the blonde shinobi's conceit. Iruka paused for a few seconds before continuing. "Well, thank you for the introduction, Naruto. You may take a seat in the back so we can start class." When Naruto's gaze landed on her, a certain pale-eyed girl with deep purple hair thought to herself, "And I hope you do fulfill your dreams, Naruto-kun." She blushed. She could still feel his gaze coming toward her, so she quickly shifted her focus to the ground to avoid it. What a fool! Why would he brag about that nonsense in class? Sasuke sighed and thought, he should at least wait a few days so that people don't just avoid him like some weirdo. Despite his brief speech a few moments ago, Naruto knew full well that he still had the attention of the majority of the girls as he walked slowly to the back of the classroom. I don't understand why Sasuke-kun is right here and all these girls are swooning over that slob. A girl with pink hair pondered as she looked at Sasuke with a sparkle in her eye. It's a little unsettling that it appears that girl and Sasuke still have a one-sided relationship. She does, of course. Don't you remember that this is the past? But I'll have to discuss it with her later personally. I think they could make a good couple, so I'm all for them. Additionally, since Sasuke will be among the greatest medic nins since Tsunade, I might be able to convince her to fall for all that. Rebuild the clan garbage. In any case, it appears that you are somewhat more well-liked by the female humans this time. Huh, I was certain that my brief speech would turn off the majority of the girls. Oh well, a little more attention is fine with me. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to experience what it's like to be surrounded by Sasuke-like fangirls for a day or two. When Naruto reached the very back, he sat down next to a furiously flushed Hinata who continued to gaze at the floor. He chose to speak first after a few awkward minutes of silence, much to Naruto's annoyance. Hello Hinata-chan. How are you? How is the old man? Hinata lifted her eyes as high as they would go, but her head was only just high enough to see Naruto. I'm fine Naruto-kun. Thanks for asking. Hiyashi-sama is fine. Hef found out that we were going to be in the same class and W wanted me to tell you that you were welcome over any time. She quickly turned her head back toward the floor after responding, doing her best not to pass out. Looking at this young girl who had nearly passed out at the thought of having a conversation with him for less than 30 seconds made Naruto feel almost sorry for her. He concluded that in order to calm her anxiety and boost her self-esteem, he would undoubtedly need to spend at least some time with her. Thinking back to her confession during his fight with Pain, he at least understood why she always stammered around him. Now that he had had time to reflect, Naruto still felt conflicted about it. She was one of the most beautiful kunoichi he had ever seen, and she loved him without conditions. Even after learning that he had Kurama sealed inside of him, Naruto made the decision to try spending more time with Hinata and see how he felt about her. When he was very young, Naruto touched Hinata's shoulder after having these thoughts and then went on. I might just take you guys up on that offer. Thanks a bunch Hinata-chan. Not to mention that it was the second time he had referred to her as Chan. That was the last straw that drove her over the edge because she could no longer stand being so close to him. As she recalled her first encounter with Naruto, she passed out there, drifting into a comatose state. Rewind on a night without a moon. A lone Kumo nin crept across the rooftops of Konoha, confident that he would return to Kumo without incident and holding the coveted Byakugan. Just an hour before, he had been watching the Hyuga compound as the clan's heiress slowly made her way to her bedroom to spend the night there. Before she even realized there was another person in her room, he quietly broke in and knocked her unconscious. As soon as she was alone, he had a persistent feeling that someone was following him as he tied her up and left the compound, but each time he looked, he couldn't find anyone. Knowing the guard's rotation and locating the blind spot, he hurried over to the area of the wall he had been observing for the previous few nights. He believed he heard another pair of feet bound across the same rooftop. Each time he leapt across it naturally, there was nothing there when he looked in the direction of the noise. He was relieved to have completed the most difficult portion of his S-ranked mission as he leapt over the wall and into the forest that surrounded Konoha. The renowned Byakugan would now belong to Kumo. Although acquiring the Sharingan was the original plan, Uchiha Itachi had to go and destroy the mission that had been planned for years. Thankfully, shifting attention to the other dojutsu was simple. I'll make Raikage-sama very happy. I might just be able to take an early retirement. And a quick and forceful kick to the face sent the ninja flying to the ground, cutting him off. He had never felt a kick so painful in his life. As he crashed to the ground, he saw that a log had taken the place of the girl who should have been in his arms. What the? Another hard punch to the face just before he hit the ground interrupted his thoughts once more, sending him flying headfirst towards one of the many enormous trees that typified Konoha and sending him parallel to the ground. He was forced to descend the final few feet into the ground, leaving a large crater after a leg collided with his stomach just before he struck the tree. As his Kage Bunshin dealt with the intruder, Naruto observed from the top of the trees. When Naruto realized he was being handled with ease, he focused on the girl who was unconscious in his arms. She opened her eyes slowly after he gave her cheeks a gentle pat in an attempt to wake her to her. The image looked like something from a fairy tale. A dashing young man with long, blonde hair blowing in a slight breeze held her in his arms in the moonlit night, and his eyes were the kindest she had seen since her mother passed away. She continued to look into her savior's eyes as a blush gradually appeared on her face. She didn't realize the boy was talking to her for a few seconds. Hey, are you okay? Oi, are you awake? Hi? Thanked Kami. I'm glad you are okay. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. You were kidnapped by the Kumo Nin that came to visit with your clan the other day. Don't worry, you're safe now. I won't let him take you. Arigato, Naruto-kun. Happy that she was still being held so close to this enigmatic boy, she fell back asleep after that. The Kumo Nin was slowly emerging from the crater, glaring at his cage Bunshin with all the murderous intent he could muster before charging, when Naruto looked up from Hinata. Damn Gaki. You'll pay for that. I'll make sure you are withering in agony before I kill you. Before he could go very far, the Kumo shinobi felt a quick chop to the back of his head. He kicked quickly in the direction of the attack, doing everything he could to avoid blacking out, but his foot got caught. He turned again and saw a clone of the same child holding his leg, and he looked back to see the same child standing exactly where he had been before. Cage Bunshin, huh? Not bad for a Gaki. Too bad for you though. It just means I have to kill you before you could become a threat to Raikage-sama. Now be good and let me run you through. After giving it some thought, the Naruto clones all responded at once. I don't think he would like one of his ninja, one that he must have total faith in to be able to trust you with a mission of this importance. Threatening a child like this, you bring shame to Kumo shinobi everywhere by losing complete control of your emotions on such an important mission. The ninja tried to remove the clone that was holding his leg, but this only made him more enraged. The clone swiftly broke the ninja's leg with his elbow before he could kill him, then leapt back to allow the ninja to writhe in his agony and rage. What the hell do you know of Raikage-sama? Hey, more than you, I would think. Shut up. You don't know anything. I know that the Raikage is a vindictive bastard, though he cares for his shinobi above all else, even his little brother, despite the fact he is to be a Jinchuriki. The Kumo Nin were alarmed by this. Even B was unaware that B-sama was going to be a Jinchuriki, which was an S-class secret. How could this stranger abandon Gaki? For the sake of Raikage-sama and Kumogakure, I must kill this Gaki at all costs because he is too strong and knowledgeable. The battle was going well, and the real Naruto, who was still holding Hinata, was happy. We can capture him and stop Neji's father from dying, hopefully removing that stick from his ass, if my clone is able to knock him out. In my opinion, it resembles a tree more. Naruto chuckled a little at this remark, considering how accurate Kurama was. In any case, it will benefit everyone. Hopefully, Hinata's childhood will be better if her cousin doesn't despise her if we catch his ninja in the act and return him unharmed. Well, mostly unharmed. The Raikage will be unable to exact revenge. Byakugan was now fully activated when Hiyashi Hyuga arrived on the scene and discovered his daughter in the arms of Konoha's demon child, though the child now appeared to be shielding Hinata from the enemy in the same manner that a parent shields their child. Only after making this observation did he see the Kumo Nin, who appeared to be in poor condition, with multiple internal injuries and what appeared to be a broken leg. His approach to Naruto was interrupted by the hysterical shouting of the Kumo Nin. If I can't fulfill my mission in life, then I will do it in death. Before he opened his vest and showed himself covered in explosive tags, the ninja started performing a number of hand seals. He and what he believed to be Naruto were taken to the opposite side when the ninja set the tags on fire. In his mind, Naruto cried out, "Damn it, what am I gonna do now? Slow down. We are at a loss for what to do. As in the past, the Raikage will seek revenge. Well, I suppose that would be the future." Naruto was obviously upset because he felt that he had failed Hinata and Neji and condemned them to needless pain and suffering. Hiyashi didn't understand why the ninja would risk his life to eliminate a few Cage Bunshin, but he didn't give it much thought when he thought of his daughter, still wary of the boy who had just played with a Chunin and backed him into a corner from which suicide was the only way out. He leapt over to Naruto. When he got close, he spoke in a firm voice that seemed to shake the boy out of his reverie. I, Hyuga Hiyashi, am incredibly grateful to you for saving my daughter, Uzumaki Naruto. You will always be welcome in our clan from now on. The elders shouldn't have any issues with you either, and if they do, I will just say that you also prevented Kumo from obtaining the Byakugan. With a nod, Naruto gave Hiyashi Hinata and started to head back to Konoha, but paused to speak to the man again. I only want two things from the Hyuga, Hiyashi-sama, and one thing in particular from you. The child's remarks just seemed too old, coming from someone so young, so Hiyashi raised an eyebrow, figuring he should at least make fun of the boy. Continue. First, I want you to always treat Hinata with the gentleness of a father, and not the cruelty of a clan head. Hiyashi was taken aback by this, which only served to pique his interest in what else the boy might request. What about your second request? I want you to treat Neji as well as you can, as you and I both know that the Raikage will demand vengeance, and so your twin brother will be sent in your stead to die. Hiyashi's shock was far greater than any surprise he had previously experienced. How had this child learned so much about our clan? especially him in particular. It was almost as if the boy interrupted him before he could finish thinking. I also ask you, Hiyashi-sama, to keep the events of tonight's events to yourself. I also don't want you to look into what I've said. You and your clan would be disgraced if you disregarded the straightforward demands of someone who had just rescued the Hyuga clan's heiress. Simply state that you battled the nin until he killed himself in an effort to bring you down with him. If someone should inquire, tell Hinata it was all a dream. When she wakes up and asks you what happened, do you concur? I don't see any reason not to. However, only if you agreed to train with Hinata for a minimum of some time. It would be very beneficial for her to spar with a fighter of your caliber. All right, as long as you comply with my requests. Hiyashi was left to his thoughts, which, ironically, weren't that complicated because he was only thinking about one thing at the moment, as Naruto leapt away to resume his training with Kurama. What on earth just happened? Finish the flashback. There was nothing Naruto could do to rouse Hinata from her pleasant dream, so he shrugged and went to see what the class was about, only to be let down to discover that they were reciting the achievements of the previous Hokages. Unfortunately, I've already met all of the previous Kages. Hashirama Oji-san was cool, but his brother was a jerk who had a stump-like personality. Wait, do you know who makes me think of Kurama? That brat from Uchiha over there. How did you know? Wait, don't worry. If you demonstrated above-average qualities, you wouldn't be on the same team as before, so this meager education is just for show. You have to barely pass all the tests to be on the same team. I know, until a few years ago, I had forgotten about how they assign teams. They take the most talented, the smartest, and the worst. All right, but since you fall into all three of those categories, you must naturally act like Adobe. Naruto grimaced at the thought, not anticipating how long it would take for people to stop referring to him as dead last, or Doby. Well, practically everyone would make fun of him, with the exception of the purple-haired girl seated next to him, who was now grinning mischievously while still dreaming. In any event, I believe that your academic studies have advanced sufficiently for us to start the second phase of your training. You have successfully raised all of your elemental jutsu to a high level of Chunin, and we will continue this training with a unique twist. And Kurama, what sort of twist would that be? You'll have to wait and see. I'll explain everything in the forest after the academy, as we usually do. Hi. The rest of the day went fairly well for Naruto, although he thought the teacher's explanations of the fundamentals, such as the essence of chakra and how shinobi shaped it into jutsu, were a little dull. He was able to talk to all of his old friends, well, the new ones he would be making now, during the lunch break, and he had noticed that Ino and some of the other girls in his class were much friendlier with him than he remembered. He tried not to pay any attention to them as he looked around for Hinata, but she never seemed to be there, though he would frequently catch glimpses of her observing him from behind a tree or the academy building. After lunch, everyone filed back inside to resume classes, and Naruto chose to take advantage of the opportunity to establish the groundwork for his interactions with Hinata now rather than later. Hinata-chan, why did you avoid me at lunch? You were always gone when I thought I had located you. Despite my best efforts to find you, have I done anything that has angered you? The girl, who was completely unprepared for the abrupt series of questions, appeared to be a deer caught in a car's headlights. She was so taken aback that she barely had time to consider her response before blurting it out. Naruto-kun, I could never be angry with you, it's just that I felt I should leave you alone because you were surrounded by a bunch of other G-girls. Naruto grinned and said, all right, now that we've resolved that, I want you to join me for lunch every day going forward, regardless of who else is with me. Even though I doubt they will spend much time with me in the coming days, I will simply tell everyone else to get over their nervousness if you do. Hello. Not believing that one of her dreams was coming true, Hinata blushed as she replied. After that, the rest of the day went by quickly as planned. Naruto made sure to pretend that he knew very little about chakra and jutsu, much to Iruka's annoyance. When it came time to practice taijutsu and throw kunai, he stumbled on his own feet, intentionally fell, and held the kunai incorrectly. Even when it came time to practice hand seals, he managed to tie his fingers in knots, earning Iruka a blow to the head and laughter from the rest of the class. Finally, it was time for one-on-one sparring, and, coincidentally, Naruto was paired with Sasuke. When it began, Naruto couldn't help but give Sasuke a little scare, so he ran at him. Sasuke then reflexively threw a punch to Naruto's face, so Naruto chose to throw his face into the punch, strengthening his skin with chakra and taking the blow squarely in the jaw, carefully forcing the majority of the energy pack into Sasuke's hand. He then deftly jumped back as though he had taken a heavy hit, lying in the dirt while he listened to Sasuke being proclaimed the winner. When the spar ended, Naruto jumped up, grinning broadly, and turned to face Sasuke. Nice punch, Sasuke. That one hurt a lot, but I'll get you the next time. Yeah, exactly Doby, Keep thinking that whenever we battle, I'll always come out on top. Naruto turned and started to leave, but as he did, he glanced over his shoulder and noticed Sasuke gripping his hand and watching with wide eyes as it swelled up. Naruto laughed when he saw the shock spill over Sasuke's face as the pain in his hand started to register. Whoa, that felt like I punched a brick wall. What the hell was that? Everyone's eyes darted between the two, wondering who had actually won, the guy who had been hit and was laughing as he walked off the field, or the guy who held his hand and appeared to have punched a beehive. Before Hinata broke the ice, Naruto approached her and sat down beside her without exchanging words. It was an amazing battle, and Naruto-kun. I lost this one, but thanks, Hinata, but don't worry, I'll get him the next time. She quickly turned her face away from him and looked at the ground, attempting to avoid his stare as he gave her a thumbs up and a radiant smile. The shy girl then slowly drew her hand closer to his, and as soon as their hands touched, she sighed a little and then passed out. Naruto couldn't help but laugh to himself as he felt the contact, and he saw Hinata fall forward, just in time to catch her before she hit the ground. What the devil? That's all for today, everyone. See you all tomorrow morning. Iruka yelled across the yard as the final spar came to an end. Everyone started to depart, with the exception of Naruto, who now carried an unconscious Hinata in his arms and, with a sigh, placed her on his back in a piggyback position. He then proceeded to search for Hinata's escort, ignoring the glares of the envious girls, and approached the tall, pale-eyed man who only watched as the young blonde approached him with his charge, who seemed to be unconscious, and carefully handed her to him. I assume you're the well-known Naruto Uzumaki. Tomorrow morning, I have been told to invite you to the Hyuga compound for breakfast and a light spar with Hinata-sama. My name is Hodo Hyuga. Oh, thank you, but I have been informed to tell you that Hiyashi-sama insists. Sigh, all right, I agree. When should I get there? Hiyashi-sama will be happy to hear of your acceptance, the man said with a smile. You could get there at 7. Uzumaki-sama, sayonara. He smiled warmly at the man over his shoulder before leaping off to start his training, saying, just call me Naruto. After an hour, in the woods. So, Kurama, what is today's training schedule? First, create 15 cage bunshin, and practice 3 chakra manipulations for each element. I want you to be proficient in all types of manipulation before you finish your year at the academy. If you can master each type of elemental manipulation, the jutsus from that element will increase several times in power while using less chakra. Additionally, if you master the chakra manipulation of each element, you can combine the elements to use new jutsu. For example, Kaden and Doden could be combined to create a devastating storm technique, or Futon and Raiden could be combined to create a devastating storm technique. Naruto grunted as he followed Kurama's instructions, rapidly constructing clones to finish the task at hand. Although he was aware that it would take years to carry out Kurama's instructions, Naruto couldn't wait to see the faces of some of the Akatsuki as they were electrocuted or buried by blazing hot magma. Alright, so I think it's time to start teaching you more about Fuinjutsu. Your father was supposed to be a master Fuinjutsu user, but in reality, he was only mediocrely skilled. I don't understand. I assumed that my mother, a full-fledged Uzumaki who was renowned for their proficiency in Fuinjutsu, was the one who taught him. When the Uzumaki homeland of Whirlpool was destroyed, most of the knowledge on Fuinjutsu was lost. Fortunately for you, my first container was Mito Uzumaki, who was formally trained in Fuinjutsu and was by far the best practitioner of that time. Of course, a lot of her knowledge was passed on to me, and I can now teach you. Yes, Minato was taught by Kushina, but she wasn't taught the art because she grew up in Konoha. It would be more beneficial to practice my ninjutsu and taijutsu instead of learning Fuinjutsu. In my opinion, I could also start learning Kenjutsu, which would be extremely awesome. You have obviously never fought a Fuinjutsu master. They were able to turn the landscape around them into one huge trap. Your father's famed technique, Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, was said to have been his own technique. The legend was that it was a modified version of the Shunshin created by the second Hokage, then adopted by Minato, but it were the Uzumaki who truly invented it. They were able to spread seals throughout the battlefield and move to each one with little effort. Most shinobi who fought the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu masters were killed before they even knew there was an enemy. They were also able to take control of a person's movements through seals that they placed on their enemies' bodies during battle, sowing chaos throughout the enemy formation by having allies turn on one another. Fuinjutsu is only limited by the user's imagination with how to use it, and as such it is by far the most dangerous of all battle techniques to use, not to mention the hardest to learn. I apologize for always doubting you, Kurama. Let's start this show. Oh, alright, let's start by teaching you how to write the seals correctly, then you can incorporate all that kanji you claimed was a waste of time. The Hyuga compound the following morning after breakfast, Naruto, Hiyashi, Hinata, and a few other members strolled through the compound. Naruto wore his best clothes for the event, even tying his hair back with string to try to keep it from falling over his shoulders. The conversation was a little too dull for Naruto's taste, with most of the talking taking place between Hiyashi and himself while the elders seemed to glare at the child. Hinata occasionally chirped, but mostly she just alternated between staring at Naruto and staring at the ground in a flush. Hanabi was happy to eat her meal in peace, which didn't bother Naruto much because he never interacted with the girl much, even in his own time. Unfortunately for Naruto, the elders were obstinate and would not stop their prejudice against the boy for merely being polite during a meal. He seemed to impress everyone at the table with his manners, dispelling the myth that he was an uncivil orphan who should be expelled from Konoha. Following the meal, the group moved into the sparring area, where the elders, led by Hiyashi, explained the rules for a controlled spar. Points were awarded based on body blows, knockdowns were equal to 2 body blows, and a knockout was an instant victory. Naruto and Hinata soon found themselves in their fighting stances, waiting for the referee to start the match. When the white-eyed Hyuga started the match, they both stared at each other, with Naruto waiting for Hinata to charge him and Hinata attempting to steady her visibly trembling legs. A few of the elders closed their eyes and started shaking their heads at the weakness that Hinata was displaying. So Naruto looked around the room. He knew that Hinata was undoubtedly nervous, but he had an idea about how to make her stand out to her family, so he started the attack, avoiding her first palm strike to his shoulder and spinning on his toes so that he passed by Hinata's left side. As he slid past her, he whispered softly into her ear so that only she could hear him. "Hinata-chan, don't be alarmed. This is just a spar, don't worry. I won't be angry with you and you won't hurt me. If you hit me, you are just too nice to go all out. Even though I know how strong you are, I'll take you out on a date on a night of your choosing if you can put in the effort and get a good hit on me, that is, if you can strike me." As he walked past her, Naruto swiftly turned around and watched as his words registered with the young girl, causing a furious flush to appear on her face as she began to consider the potential of his deal. However, the flush quickly subsided, and Naruto saw a spark ignite in Hinata's eyes that nearly alarmed him, satisfied that she would now fight with everything she had, perhaps even more so than she had done during the Chunin exams against Neji, and that no force on earth could stop her now. She charged the young man with a yell, hurling strike after strike at Naruto, which, according to the spar's rules, contained no Juken chakra but would still cause a good deal of pain if they hit. The spar raged for minutes, with Hinata unable to land a single blow despite her speed, while Naruto dodged all of her blows gracefully, as if dancing around her, and her arms blurred together in front of her eyes. "I can't do this, I'm a failure. I won't ever be strong enough to stay with Naruto-kun. I just want to be with him. This is so frustrating. Why can't I hit him? He's just too fast." She was about to give up when a strange sensation appeared in her eyes, but she ignored it and carried on with her attack. In vain to onlookers, it appeared as though the two kids were locked in a complex dance, moving far too quickly for their age. Tears started to well up in her eyes as she continued to miss Naruto, who had yet to even block one of her strikes. Hinata closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and gasped as her eyes started to tingle more, the kind of feeling you get when you lay on someone's leg for a long time and it falls asleep. She was able to see Naruto's chakra coils and all of his tenketsu points, and she stared in disbelief for a few moments. "I can see everyone's chakra now, so this must be Byakugan. This is fantastic, Naruto-kun, thank you so much." She started to glance around the room at the elders and then at her father, who was grinning broadly, before turning back to Naruto and gasping because, based on her comparison of her father's chakra coils and Naruto's, she could only assume that Naruto's coils were between 90 and 100 times larger. "I can't let this chance pass me by, so I must hit him. How is this possible? It must be my eyes. Yes, that has to be it. I just activated them, so there are still flukes." In an attempt to end the spar and obtain the promised reward, she charged Naruto once more, but he appeared to be slower this time. As the spar continued for a few minutes, she got closer and closer to striking him, landing a final blow on Naruto's stomach. "Naruto, you'd better start using some chakra to avoid her attacks, because if it hits, it's going to knock you on your ass." "I was only going to use the wind chakra that surrounds me to avoid her attacks, and I would only do so as long as I could sense them with the chakra that surrounds my body. If I used anything else, everyone here would be able to detect it, but this method uses just enough chakra to prevent them from sensing it." HNNN. The referee declared Hinata the winner of the duel, and Hiyashi gave Naruto a quiet nod, grateful that the young boy had not only shown off Hinata's skills to all the elders, but also helped her unlock the Byakugan at such a young age. As the brief mental argument came to an end, Hinata delivered the hit that sent Naruto sliding across the floor, leaving everyone stunned and unable to believe that the shy little girl had just sparred someone with such ferocity. With the intention of congratulating Hinata on her well-earned date, Naruto stood up and approached her. "Hinata-chan, that was really incredible. You kept me on the defensive during that spar, so I hardly had a chance to throw in a few of my own regarding my pledge. Simply inform me in class and I will let you choose the time and location." "Naruto-kun, arigato. Why, you were also great. I'm happy we were able to spar together." Did she just say a whole sentence without stuttering, I wonder? It is called progress. Naruto. Huh. Guess so. Thanks, Hinata-chan. I can't wait to see what you plan for the date. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as Hinata's face lit up with a very cunning smile, but he was quickly pushed aside as a number of the elders gathered around Hinata with the intention of congratulating her. "Hiyashi-sama, thank you for the wonderful breakfast and the opportunity to spare your daughter," Naruto said with a deep bow as he approached Hiyashi. "Unfortunately, it appears that some of the Hyuga elders want me to leave, and I have to go get ready for class." "Naruto, of course I'll take care of those old, wrinkled bags soon, so don't worry about them. I have already expressed my gratitude to you for saving my daughter, but I owe you even more for exposing her abilities in front of the men who were discussing making her younger sister the clad head just yesterday." "It was my pleasure, Hiyashi-sama." After ignoring more irate looks from some of the guards around the house, Naruto got back up and left the Hyuga compound, collapsing on his bed in his apartment, still exhausted from training the night before. After 10 months, the two became very close over the past year, and to Naruto's surprise, she was unquestionably in charge of their relationship. Naruto entered the academy once more and headed to his seat in the back next to Hinata, feeling sad that this was the last day he would have to just enjoy being with everyone, especially Hinata. Rewind. Not that she had to press him too hard, but after his promised first date, she made him agree to another, and after a week or two of dating and 5 separate dates, all of which Hinata chose, she became more gregarious. After spending the evening with her, Naruto walked her back to the Hyuga compound where he decided to give her a quick kiss on the cheek before he left, but Hinata saw what he was going to do and turned her head to change the kiss's destination. Naruto stared blankly as he kissed Hinata on the lips, something he had no intention of doing, at least for a while. What confused him the most was that Hinata, the shyest girl he had ever met, took the initiative and put her arms around his neck, refusing to let him back. Since this was his first time in a situation like this, he was unsure of what to do. "Holy shishti, this is so hot, pervert fox, leave soon. You're not entertaining." After a few minutes, Hinata ended the call, thanked Naruto for the evening, and then she walked away, giggling as she saw the blonde's face flush. Shortly after that, Naruto began to feel happy and dizzy whenever she was around, not realizing that he was beginning to feel a love for Hinata. Final flashback. Since Konoha couldn't lose a ninja with Sasuke's skill and they would soon need it, Naruto was determined to rid Sasuke of his hatred and wouldn't allow that Sannin bastard to corrupt him any further. Naruto laughed silently as he realized how different the timeline of this time period was from his own, but he was certain that he had to be on Team 7 again. Hinata jolted Naruto out of his reverie. "Iruka is calling people forward for the Bunshin portion of the test. Naruto-kun, I take it you practiced?" Naruto wanted to learn another S-class jutsu, but he couldn't tell Hinata about it. He knew he couldn't pass up the chance to look at the Forbidden Scroll once more. "Obviously, I did, Hinata-heim, but the truth is that I'm terrible at Bunshin." "I don't understand how you can say that while grinning." "Shoot, now it's my turn, Naruto-kun, good luck." "Don't worry, you don't need it." Naruto watched as his classmates one by one executed the Bunshin with success, and before long, he was called to the front of the class. "Okay Naruto, now all you have to do is perform a Bunshin of me and you will be able to graduate this year." After discussing the possibility of failing his test with Kurama for several nights, Naruto came to the conclusion that he was satisfied with. "Of course, Iruka-sensei. Get ready to witness the most amazing Bunshin of your life." When the smoke eventually cleared from the room after Naruto threw his hands together, all of the girls in the class, aside from Hinata, passed out and fell onto their desks, blood running down their noses. The 17-year-old Sasuke was standing at the front of the room, shirtless, his pants nearly falling down on Iruka's desk in a very suggestive way. Needless to say, all of the male students in the class started throwing up violently, and Iruka struck Naruto over the head as hard as he could to knock him out of his henge. "Naruto, you fail." Naruto tried to look upset after being knocked out of his henge, but he couldn't help but laugh at the mess he had made. He walked slowly to the back of the room, trying to avoid stepping on his classmates' regurgitated lunches, to an anxious-looking Hinata. Hinata tried to comfort him after his failure, telling him that there would always be next year, but to her astonishment, Naruto didn't seem frustrated at all. In fact, He seemed excited. She was unable to stay long because her father had organized a graduation celebration for the now officially recognized Hyuga clan heiress. Naruto left the classroom as soon as she did, and Mizuki came up to him almost immediately. "You know, Naruto, I think I might know of a way that you can still graduate from the academy without doing the bunshin." "Really?" Naruto said, looking up at Mizuki with artificial tears in his eyes. "How?" "As you can see, the Hokage's office contains this scroll. Since it's well known that only genuine shinobi can enter his office covertly, if you can do so and steal the scroll, he will be forced to acknowledge you as a true shinobi. Naturally, in order for him to have evidence that you received the scroll, you must bring it to me." "Stupid brat. Now I will be able to get my hands on the scroll and kill the fox demon." Ha. Mizuki thought as he watched the boy jump from rooftop to rooftop on his mission, laughing to himself at how well thought out his plan was. Soon after, Naruto had the scroll and was examining it in the forest. Avoiding Kage Bunshin and searching for any jutsu that piqued his interest, he spotted the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. But Kurama stopped him. "Don't waste this opportunity on that particular jutsu. You will be able to figure it out later as you learn more about Fuinjutsu." Naruto complained a little about missing the chance to learn his father's methods, but he concluded that Kurama was right. All right. As he read on, Naruto discovered that the majority of the material was about specific Kekkei Genkais, and he was on the verge of giving up when he came to the very end of the scroll and noticed an odd-looking jutsu. "How about this one, Kurama? It's odd that I haven't heard of the Dohatsuden no Jutsu, Fury technique, before. It must have been developed recently. Read it." According to this theory, it starts when a huge quantity of chakra is collected in a container and then released all at once, creating a huge explosion. "I don't think either of us is planning on blowing ourselves up like that idiot Akatsuki member with the long blonde ponytail, so that one won't help you at all." The sneeze came from Deidara somewhere in Iwagakure. Select an alternative. Wait, I have a thought. According to this, the energy is drawn from the earth and the atmosphere. Just like Senjutsu chakra, if I could alter this technique so that I could confine it to, say, my hand or foot, I could punch with as much explosive force as one of Deidara's C3 bombs that would be sufficient to make Tsunade Boshin's blows feel like a gentle tap. "I'll give it to you. Kit, you've definitely improved your creativity from your previous life. I'm relieved that our study time wasn't in vain. Well, you'd better get started." A few hours later, as Mizuki, disguised as Iruka, pursued Iruka, disguised as Naruto, Mizuki fervently hoped that the scroll would give him great strength, but he was unaware that he lacked the chakra and affinity to learn anything from it. Naruto watched as Iruka kicked Mizuki, causing them both to fall to the ground, and just as Mizuki produced a shuriken and hurled it at Iruka, Naruto made his move. Running from his hiding spot, he caught the shuriken in midair and threw it back at Mizuki, who quickly leapt out of the way. "Ha ha ha ha. What a dumb brat. When that fool over there diverted my attention with that henge, you ought to have simply left. I get to kill you too now." Iruka clutched the wound on his side as he attempted to stand but fell back down. "Naruto, leave this place. I'll keep him at bay long enough for you to escape without incident." "Sorry, Iruka-sensei, but it's not possible. As you can see, this man violated both the village and one of his students' trusts. Just sit there and unwind while I take out the trash, because people who betray their village are trash, but those who betray their comrades are worse than trash." Mizuki burst out laughing at Naruto's audacious claim. "Demon, you think you can defeat me? Are you even aware of who you are?" "Mizuki, quit." Iruka made an unsuccessful attempt to quiet Mizuki. "Are you aware of why you are so despised by everyone? Nobody is supposed to tell you, but the Yondaime Hokage had to seal the Kyuubi inside a newborn baby after failing to kill it during its attack. You were the only baby available. The Kyuubi is you. You are to blame for all those fatalities. Ha. When Naruto smiled and raised his fingers to create a seal, Mizuki stopped laughing. "Sorry Mizuki, but since you just disclosed a village secret, you are going to have to be punished." The next words that came out of Naruto's mouth horrified Mizuki. "Bunshin no Jutsu, Taju Kage." Then, being extremely careful to control his strength, Naruto pounded Mizuki until he was within an inch of his life. After Mizuki was taken care of, Naruto received Iruka's headband as a token of his passing. Naruto was thrilled to rekindle their relationship, and a quick visit to his favorite ramen shop didn't hurt either. The following day at the academy, Hinata gasped as she saw Naruto enter the room wearing his typical outfit, but with one item on his forehead that wasn't there before. Akonohahite 8 Naruto was wearing black pants, a black long-sleeved shirt with orange flames and the red Uzumaki crest on his back, and his typical, albeit dreamy, long, sun-kissed, spiky blonde hair that ran down his back as he made his way back to his seat, Hinata couldn't help but ask the obvious. "Where did you get that, Naruto-kun? I believed you didn't pass yesterday's test." "Don't worry, Hinata-hime, I spoke with Iruka-sensei after class, and after a brief demonstration he decided that I was indeed worthy of being a Konoha-nin," Naruto said, laughing to himself. When Hinata heard the news, she gave him a tight hug and said, "Naruto-kun, that's fantastic news. Then, I hope we'll be on the same team. A dream come true, that would be." Even though everything else was already different, Naruto knew that wouldn't happen, so he frowned down at the desk and made sure to at least maintain the team arrangements. "Yeah, Hinata-hime, that would be great." When Iruka started naming the teams, Hinata looked at him bewildered and was about to ask him why he had suddenly become so depressed, but he was interrupted when he reached Team 7. Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto make up Team 7. Hitaki Kakashi will be your Chunin sensei. Iruka went on reading names after the Sasuke fangirl's complaints subsided and one particular girl with pink hair stopped celebrating. As Hinata was about to start crying, she felt a pair of hands pull her into a warm embrace. She looked up at Naruto, who gave her a warm smile. Now, she recalled how they paired the class and realized that Naruto would never have been on her team. "Hinata-hime, don't worry, though not as frequently, we will still be able to spend time together. You can be sure that I will be visiting you whenever I am on a mission. If I didn't, I would miss you too much." "Promise?" Hinata asked, looking up into his eyes. "You know that my nindo is to never tell a lie, and to always protect my friends no matter what." She pressed herself closer to his chest and closed her eyes, saying, "I know, I just needed to hear you say it." As people started leaving the classroom to meet with their teams, Naruto reluctantly let her go. After a few minutes, Iruka told Team 7 to wait in the classroom to meet with their sensei. Naruto was furious as he watched Hinata go because he saw Kiba eyeing her up, watching her every move like a predator watches his prey. He watched the boy lick his lips and then followed Hinata and Shino to their meeting with their Chunin sensei. "I swear, if he touches her I will break his fingers off and feed them to his damn dog." "Naruto, that was really dark for you. I don't know why, but I just want to punch guys whenever they eye Hinata up. I can't help it." "That's called jealousy," Kurama laughed. "Just trust her, remember that she was the one who was utterly enamored with you the last time." Yes, if he touches Kiba, I'll still hurt her." Sasuke and Sakura approached Naruto and sat down in anticipation of meeting their sensei. Interrupting his thoughts, Naruto sighed and temporarily put aside all of his resentful thoughts about Kiba. "Well, Kurama, I suppose this is where the fun begins." While waiting for Kakashi in the classroom with his team, Naruto made the decision to demonstrate that he had not only gotten better at taijutsu and ninjutsu over the previous year, but also had picked up a respectable amount of fuinjutsu. Rather than a chalk eraser wedged in the door, a bucket of glue was now sitting above it, secured by a seal. Another seal was placed on top of it, destroying both seals as soon as the trigger seal was pressed. Additionally, Naruto positioned seals so that feathers would rise from underneath the floor just inside the door when someone stepped on it. Long ago, Naruto made the decision that he would take the necessary steps to help Kakashi break his bad habits now rather than later. Naruto recollected his earlier conversation with Kurama and stepped back, pleased with his powerful fuinjutsu trap. Rewind. Naruto was in one of his regular training locations, one of his locations because he had a tendency to quickly ruin the scenery. He was doing the best he could with his chakra manipulations. He was only beginning to understand the dangers of seals as he was emerging from the first stage of fuinjutsu. He could store anything he wanted and then use it as a weapon. He also discovered that the entire seal would subsequently blow up if he made even one mistake when drawing it. When he attempted to store a box of kunai, he experienced his first seal malfunction. It goes without saying that Naruto immediately made sure to draw the seal. "Naruto, I believe we ought to pause and discuss your future with Team 7. "How about it? I believed we had previously decided that I would rejoin my original squad in order to save Sasuke." "That isn't the point. What will you do when you encounter your first adversary is what I want to know. We both know you're terrible at trying to hold back, so you can't just use your normal strength or it will be painfully obvious that something is wrong." The truth of Kurama's statement made Naruto laugh. "All right, then what would you suggest I do?" "Well, since your cage bunshin divide your power, I think it should be okay to use them. However, I want you to use as much fuinjutsu as you can in simple taijutsu instead of advanced taijutsu or heavy ninjutsu." Naruto struck his forehead with his palm. "Are you crazy? Before I reach the Chunin exams, I'll be dead. I wanted to use my new method against Haku's mirrors because Zabuza will tear me a new one." "How about a deal, then? I'll teach you Minato's technique, the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. If you don't use any of the ninjutsu you have been practicing until the Chunin exams, I believe you will have advanced sufficiently in your fuinjutsu training by then. Zabuza. Tearing you a new one refers to the fact that you are only permitted to use your advanced taijutsu in dire situations. That shouldn't be too much of an issue, I suppose. Hell, if the matchups don't change, it might be enjoyable to use that strategy against Neji in the exams. Finish the flashback. Even though Kakashi was a well-known Chunin, Sakura and Sasuke silently watched him, hoping his trap would work because they were as irritated as Naruto was. To their delight, everything went off in perfect order as soon as the one-eyed man entered the room. Sasuke laughed quietly, but the other three new genin all laughed hysterically. Their new Chunin sensei looked like a chicken without a beak, and they couldn't stop laughing. Despite his displeasure at being the target of their jokes, Kakashi chose to be the bigger person and ignore it because it was their first time meeting and he was much older than them. He was shocked to see an advanced seal on the floor when he first entered the room. Naruto had neglected to apply a destruction seal. Looking around his new genin team, he tried to figure out who was a skilled user of fuinjutsu. Naruto was still holding his stomach in laughter when his gaze finally settled on him. Well, I guess I deserved that anyway. Meet me on the roof in 10 minutes so we can discuss your futures as shinobi. The three were left to go clean up after Kakashi vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes and concluded that they should follow the instructions after they had laughed for a few more minutes. Come on guys, I guess we should go meet our new sensei before he gets there before us. Sasuke just stood up and uttered a little "HN." While Sakura followed him around like a lost puppy in an attempt to keep up with Sasuke, she pushed Naruto aside. I really need to discuss that with her. If I have to watch all of this again, I might just throw up. Slowly, Naruto stood back up and followed his group. Reaching a grumpy-looking Kakashi, he made the decision to start the introductions when he saw Naruto, his final member. Good, now that everyone is here we can begin. How about we all introduce ourselves? So let's all give our name, hobbies, interests, and future dreams. After a long silence, Naruto made the decision to speak. I think it's only proper manners for the one who began conversation to begin introductions, wouldn't you agree, sensei? Sigh, okay then. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. My hobbies. Well, I don't feel like telling you all. I have many interests. My future dreams? I also don't feel like telling you all now. How about Loudmouth goes next? Nah, I'd rather go last. Sasuke or Sakura can go next. Sakura seized the opportunity to impress Sasuke with her aspirations for the future. My name is Haruno Sakura. My hobbies are learning and talking to Sasuke-kun. My interest is talking to Sasuke-kun. My future dream is to become the best kunoichi Konoha has ever known, and also be with Sasuke-kun. The pink-haired girl finished, and Kakashi said, "Thank you Sakura for your extensive introduction. Sasuke, you are up next." My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have no interests or hobbies. I only have two future goals, the first being the revival of my clan and the second being the death of a certain man. As he spoke, the air seemed to drop 10 degrees, but Naruto was too busy remembering everything he knew about Itachi to notice Kakashi turned to face Naruto, who was clearly upset by Sasuke's declaration as he gazed at the ground. If only you knew the truth, Sasuke. The hardships Itachi endured are incomprehensible in comparison to yours. I'm going to find a way to steer you away from this dark path. Before speaking, Naruto chose to pause for a few seconds to allow Sasuke's words to fully register. Naruto observed as everyone started to roll their eyes at his statement. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My hobbies are training and having fun with my few friends. My interests include spending time with Hyuga Hinata and eating ramen. My future dream is to become the Hokage and protect those people close to me, but more than that, I want to have the strength necessary to find peace in this ninja system. I want to see the day when we can all live without fear, free from the cycle of hatred that plagues the shinobi world. Everybody's jaw was on the ground, and Kakashi's would have been as well if he hadn't been wearing a face mask. He gazed at the child in front of him, his eyes full of resolve and not the slightest bit of hesitation. Those weren't Genin's words. Those were the words of someone who has witnessed widespread hatred and death. You would be pleased with the man your son has grown into, Minato. Thank you Naruto, that was most inspiring. Moving on, tomorrow morning we will meet here, then go to Training Ground 21 where I will administer your Genin test. I thought we already passed the Genin test? Sakura interjected, displaying her Hite 8. That was the test to see if you were ready to leave the academy. My test will determine if you have what it takes to perform your duties as a team. Each test is given by the sensei of each team individually, and they have the right to deny their team the right to become Genin if they think they aren't ready. I also don't want anyone here to eat breakfast tomorrow. If you do, I assure you that you will be seeing it again before the end of the test. Sakura made a few more brief complaints, but Kakashi dismissed them and walked away, allowing the three to consider what he had said. Naruto considered telling his teammates that they should actually eat breakfast after Kakashi left, but he had a better idea. "Hey guys, so I asked around about Hitaki Kakashi after I heard he was going to be our sensei, and so far I've heard some pretty good things, well except about that." He chose to lay it on thick because he could tell by looking around that he had their full attention now. Everyone I talked to turned pale when we started talking about his genin test, and some even went to the nearest trash bin to hurl. "I really don't think we should ignore his warning about breakfast." Naturally, Naruto was giggling uncontrollably in his head at how serious and pale Sakura and Sasuke became. Naruto made the decision to depart after concluding that his damage was complete. "Well, I better prepare for tomorrow, see you guys." He recalled his brief mental note about Sakura just before he left. He concluded that she should stop pursuing Sasuke now more than ever. "Before I leave, Sakura, I need to talk to you. It is a very urgent matter about our team." As Sasuke-kun walked home today, Sakura appeared perplexed and a little irritated that she would have to forfeit her chance to be with him because he seemed so serious. She chose to listen to him against her better judgment before starting. Naruto waited until Sasuke was well out of earshot. "Sakura, I feel that I have to talk to you about Sasuke. Be careful, because we both know what happens when she loses her temper. Angry or not, if she wants to have any chance with him, she needs to hear this." Sakura's eyes narrowed. "Well, what do you want to tell me about Sasuke-kun? I think you should stop following him around like some rabid fangirl." She immediately went to punch him in the head because this was not the appropriate thing to say to her right now, as if he knew exactly where she would strike. He ducked under it and dodged it quickly. He leaned back and grabbed her arm as it crossed his head. "Hear me out. I have a reason for saying this. It is the only way if you want to have a legitimate shot with him." This immediately prevented her from attempting to cause him temporary harm. She chose to give him one final chance before placing him in a mini coma because she was interested in what he would say to support his claim. "Go on." Naruto stepped back and released her arm. "Well, as you can see, Sasuke isn't exactly the friendliest person. You and I both heard that he only plans to restore his clan. Well, that and kill someone. Anyway, who do you think he would want to revive his clan with? The Uchiha clan. One of the most powerful clan in history. Would he want some crazy fangirl or some powerful kunoichi?" Sakura was struck hard by the realization she kept thinking about Sasuke's coldness all her life. He had always had an odd way of looking at other girls, as if he was evaluating them based on their abilities and strengths rather than who they were. What did that signify for her, then? "But then that would mean that I would never. That doesn't mean that you can't be with him." Sakura glanced up at the boy inquiringly. As soon as she heard this, in the middle of the ocean, she discovered a life raft, and she had no intention of letting it drift by. "How? Well, it's no secret that you are the smartest of our class, hence our current team. So you are already set on intelligence, so long as you don't suddenly decide to act like an idiot for no reason. I also heard that you had one of the best chakra controls of everyone in the class, and I may have been mistaken, but I could have sworn I heard some of the instructors saying that you showed as much promise as Tsunade of the Sannin in your potential as a medic nin with that kind of control. So you can be both a strong kunoichi, and still have a crush on Sasuke, but you have to let him come to you. I will talk to him and tell him what I just told you, and I have no doubt that he will see like I do. He might be cold, but he isn't stupid. He'll come around. Eventually all you have to do is train hard, and make him recognize you. If you want, I could teach you a little of what I know, seeing as we'll be on the same team and all." Even though she didn't mind much, Sakura had been listening carefully the entire time, finding it hard to believe that this guy would truly go out of his way to help her get Sasuke. Before hearing the teaching portion, she was okay with his advice. She simply needed to express her opinion. Sakura laughed when Naruto said that, "What could you possibly teach me? You were the dead last of our class, and you said it yourself. I am the smartest, so what could you teach me that Kakashi couldn't?" Naruto smiled generously. "Well, that would be up to you to decide, but I have a feeling your view of me will change tomorrow after the test. Don't forget my little warning about not eating either." He gave Sakura a final grin before leaping away, determined to track down Hinata before she left for home. Finding her didn't take long because he was becoming quite proficient at identifying people's chakra signatures, a skill he had been honing outside of Kyuubi mode. Knowing that the other person was up to no good, he became enraged when he saw another chakra signature. He heard Hinata and Kiba talking as he drew nearer, and what he heard infuriated him. Kiba appeared to have Hinata pressed up against a tree in an attempt to keep her from going. "Come on, Hinata. Just one. Just go out with me once, and if you don't like it, then you never have to do it again." "I'm sorry, Kiba-kun, but it has to be a no. I am already in a relationship with Naruto-kun. I'm sorry, but you have to excuse me. I have to go. Naruto-kun is probably looking for me right now." Kiba struck the tree close to Hinata's head with his hand. What? Why would you go out with that dead last loser? He couldn't even perform a proper bunshin for the test. He has absolutely no talent at all. Plus the things I hear about him from my mother would make even your skin crawl. Hinata raised her head and looked at Kiba. And what does your mother have to say about my Naruto-kun? A malevolent grin appeared on his face. Well, for one, she always calls him a dem. Determining to stop Kiba before he could further drag his name through the mud, Naruto then materialized in the clearing behind Kiba and covered his mouth with his palm. Then, to keep Hinata from hearing, Naruto spoke softly to Kiba. Now Kiba, we both know that what you are about to say should be left unsaid, especially if you don't have the full story. If you insist on patronizing me, I would prefer it if you face me as a man, and not go talking behind my back. On that note, I would also like to say that I don't really like the way you talk to my Hinata-han. Although Kiba was a little annoyed that Naruto was able to support him, he thought this was hilarious. What are you afraid of, Naruto-kun? If you want to fight that badly, I would be glad to take you on any time, he said, reaching up and removing Naruto's hand from his mouth before raising his voice so Hinata could hear him too. I won't shame myself by acting childish in front of Hinata-han. That is just tasteless, not to mention I don't think Hinata-chan would like it if I beat up one of her teammates. Kiba spun around and shoved Naruto out of his way. Ha ha ha. I knew it. You are a coward and a liar. On top of that, you think you have the balls to tell me to stay away from your girl. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Of course not. Hinata-han is able to decide for herself who to talk to, and if you are insinuating that I don't trust her, you are mistaken. I trust her completely, just as I know she trusts me. On that note, it doesn't mean that I would hesitate to beat the crap out of someone who is annoying her, be it a teammate or not. Hinata chose to pretend to be the naive girl before her new teammate got his ass handed to him because she could tell Naruto was becoming serious. Naruto-kun, wait. You can't fight him, you might get hurt. Let's just leave him alone, please. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Both men turned to face Hinata, but Naruto clearly heard what she had to say. Sigh. I guess you're right, Hinata-han. Naruto chose to comply as well because he couldn't help but notice this shift in perspective. I guess this is goodbye, Kiba-kun. A very shocked Kiba was left alone in a training ground by the two, muttering obscenities because he felt like he was excluded from some kind of inside joke. As they leapt away, Naruto chuckled, pleased with Hinata's cunning. You know, I could just beat him up and be done with it. Hinata laughed. That would make for some awkward team meetings, though I just need to say no enough times for him to finally get it. I just hope he doesn't do something stupid, like try to touch me. If he does that, then forget beating him up, I'll kill him. For a few moments, Hinata looked at Naruto with a nearly worried expression. Sigh. I'm just joking, Hinata-han. You know I would never hurt someone like that unless I absolutely had to. I know, I just want you to know that you won't ever have to. But let's change subjects. What did you have in mind for a date tonight? Naruto grinned. Dunno. Kakashi tried some scare tactic about us not eating, so let's go somewhere with tons of food. Hinata chuckled as she considered how Naruto appeared to be a child one moment and then an adult the next. She really enjoyed the aspect of him that kept her guessing, but more than anything else, she enjoyed how much he cared for his loved ones and how she always felt secure in his presence. The following morning, Team 7 assembled early in the morning and made their way to the training grounds as directed by Kakashi. Running across Konoha to Training Ground 21 took roughly 30 minutes. Since the genin had to move at a nearly sprint pace, this was done to test their endurance. Sasuke and Sakura were clearly exerting themselves during the run, based on Kakashi's observations, while Naruto appeared to be pretending to be exhausted for show. But the boy was completely devoid of perspiration. Even though the boy obviously had the Kyuubi inside, Kakashi mentally noted that he should keep a closer look at him to see if he appeared strange. After giving them some time to catch their breath upon their arrival, Kakashi started outlining the exercise they would be performing. Now that we're here, I guess I should explain the purpose of this test. There are 2 bells attached to my hip, and your objective is to take them from me. In any way you guys seem fit to now. Whomever does not get a bell will be sent back to the academy, doomed to never become a full-fledged genin. With the exception of Naruto, who appeared to be as composed as ever, Kakashi simply delighted in the faces of his new team. The cycloptic Chunin was amazed at this boy's will. All he needed to do was test the boy's confidence. In order to give his team the advantage of surprise, Kakashi closed his eyes for a short while. Now, any questions? No? Well then, go. A child with blonde hair was staring at him when he opened them. Naruto? The point of the start is to go hide while you strategize with your team. I just wanted to try a little something. Oh, and Kakashi, you've been tagged. When Kakashi looked down, He saw two buncheons leap up from the earth and grab hold of his legs as a unique kind of seal spread across them, cementing the one-eyed Chunin to the ground. Each clone screamed Fuinjutsu. Ashi Bandingu, sealing technique. Leg binding. How in the world did this boy pick up this type of Fuinjutsu? This isn't possible. Not even a single Fuinjutsu practitioner is in the area to instruct him. Cage buncheons, too. Right now, he ought to be on the ground, panting from chakra exhaustion. This child is becoming more and more fascinating, but wait, where has he disappeared to? Something Kakashi heard made him start hurling profanities, wishing that his keen senses had failed him this time. Sadly, they didn't, and Kakashi was left with nothing to do but pump chakra into his butt to lessen the impact of what he knew was coming. Ninjutsu. 1,000 years of death, Senin Garashi. Kakashi had just managed to switch with Naruto's technique, which blasted into a log of wood. Kakashi leapt to his feet and kicked Naruto quickly in the chest, but Naruto burst into smoke as soon as his foot touched the ground. This child is talented, but where in the world did he pick up that skill? Naruto cursed that he couldn't reimburse the Chunin for the last genin test as the clone's memories overflowed him. Naruto swiftly brushed it aside and turned to face Sakura and Sasuke. Guys, I don't think we can do this alone. Even if we only get one bell, it's better than none. I will be able to pin him down for a few seconds, since he will have already figured out how to break my Fuinjutsu bindings. Sasuke gave Naruto a cold, calculating look. Where on earth did you learn Fuinjutsu, Dobi? As part of Kurama's mental training, Naruto shuddered at the number of times he and 100 of his shadow clones sat down and committed to memory every single bit of information at his disposal. Ha 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 ha. Sasuke, you should get out more. The Konoha library is a great place to sit down and study. Sakura's next words took them both by surprise. Sasuke, I think we should listen to Naruto on this one. Teamwork is our only option here. Why didn't she use Kun to finish my name? She must be taking this very seriously. I suppose I don't really care. Thanks, Sakura. Now here is what we are gonna do. A few minutes later, Kakashi, obviously unaware of the trap he was unwittingly walking into, read his favorite orange book as he strolled through the forest. Two Naruto clones reappeared from the grounds as he was about to step over an overgrown root, applying seals to Kakashi's legs to momentarily paralyze the Chunin. Kakashi put the book down and turned to Naruto. Naruto, I think it's only fair to tell you that I've figured out how to dispel your sealing techniques. All I have to do is pump enough chakra into my legs to break them, and by the looks of it I will only be stuck here for around 2 more seconds, and I can easily defend myself for that amount of time. Naruto held back from informing him that those seals were only 1/10 of what Naruto's seals were capable of. Naruto was by far the greatest in Konoha, despite the fact that he was by no means a master of Fuinjutsu. Sasuke leapt into the clearing, hurling multiple tiny fireballs while shouting, Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. Art of the Phoenix Flower, as Naruto yelled, Hey, holding you down was never my goal at all. Before leaping away as his clone exploded into a cloud of smoke, thankful that he was able to break the seals at that moment. Kakashi instinctively leapt into the air to avoid the fireballs. Kakashi saw Sakura throw 2 blunted kunai at him just as he was in mid-jump, but he was able to quickly dodge them by twisting his body. The kunai transformed into Naruto clones and hurled more kunai at him just as he believed the attack was complete. Was it possible for him to transform his buncheon into kunai? What a clever combination. More will be required to. What? Why am I unable to move my arms and legs? Glancing down, Kakashi noticed the seals had returned to his legs and were creeping up his arms. Did he manage to conceal those seals within the initial seals on my legs and subsequently activate them? I'm dealing with a very unusual genin. The kunai transformed into more Naruto buncheons, who seized the bells and tossed them to the real Naruto in a cloud of smoke, rendering Kakashi useless. Soon after, Kakashi broke the seals on his arms and legs once more and landed. Kakashi swiftly addressed the young blonde after noticing the question developing on his team members' faces. Congratulations, Naruto, since you were the one who actually managed to get the bells. You now get to choose one of your teammates to give the other bell to. The one who doesn't get a bell has to go back to the academy. After all, those are the rules. Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi were all taken aback when Naruto sighed and tossed both bells to his teammates before responding. Sorry, Kakashi-sensei. No can do. If I had to betray one of my teammates right here and now, then I deserve to go back to the academy. I don't care if I break the rules. Sure, rules are important and those who break them are trash. But those who abandon their friends are worse than trash also. What kind of Hokage would I be if I chose to help myself before helping my fellow shinobi? Having run out of things to say, Kakashi couldn't help but notice his oldest friend's unwavering resolve in Naruto's eyes. Sasuke and Sakura were speechless. They couldn't comprehend that Naruto was willing to abandon his dream in order to further their own objectives. They would not have to part ways, which was fortunate for them. Kakashi gave Naruto a smile. Congratulations. You all passed this test. Was about teamwork and how well you all were willing to work together. You all can have the rest of the day off. And tomorrow we will start our first mission as Team 7 Naruto. Before you leave I would like to talk to you. Naruto just shrugged and started to walk with Kakashi to a more private area after Sasuke and Sakura turned to face him. Sakura said goodbye to Sasuke and then leapt off, presumably to train, which pleased Naruto. He was relieved that she was heeding his counsel and not really going around with Sasuke. Upon arriving at a remote location within the training area, Kakashi paused and faced Naruto. Now Naruto, would you care to tell me how you learned about Fuinjutsu? That level isn't taught at any academy anywhere, and I don't see who in Konoha would be able to train you in it. Well, you were right, almost. You see, I wasn't really taught by anyone. I grew up alone with no parents, so I decided to educate myself at the Konoha library. While I was there I happened upon Fuinjutsu in a book explaining all the different ways of fighting. It explained the basics like sealing equipment and making explosive tags. There was little explanation about Fuinjutsu in any other regard though, and I was about to shrug it off as useless until I realized why there was so little on it. There were only two reasons that I could think of. The first thing I could think up was that there was no one in Konoha who had mastered it enough to write anything on it, which I can believe since there isn't really anyone running around sealing everything in sight. The next thing that hit me was that since the effects of a Fuinjutsu varies on how it is written, its applications are almost limitless, so I decided to experiment as much as I could, and train in the experiments that worked, and here I am today also. How cool does this sound? Naruto Uzumaki, Hokage of Konohagakure and Fuinjutsu Master? It has a ring to it, don't you agree? Although Kakashi still had his doubts, he was unable to find a reason to doubt Naruto at this time, so he chose to put the matter to rest because his team was not in danger. Okay Naruto, I was just curious. Enjoy your day off. Thanks Kakashi-sensei. Naruto then leapt away, determined to locate Hinata and have another date that, hopefully, ended as well as the one from the previous evening. Rewind. Hinata and Naruto were on a simple date at Naruto's favorite ramen shop, and Naruto was taking her home. They talked about all the various facets of being a genin on the way back to the Hyuga compound. They would have the opportunity to visit the elemental nations, make new friends, and develop their shinobi skills. Naruto was about to bid the Hyuga compound good night when Hinata pushed him violently into the nearest alleyway. Pinning him against the wall, she pressed her lips to his before he could say another word. Naruto adored Hinata's more combative side because it simply made her sexier. That drove him crazy because it was so different from her usual behavior. The sound of someone clearing his throat caused the two of them to split up after a minute or two of enraged making out. Hiyashi Hyuga was standing at the alleyway's entrance, staring at the two lovers with narrowed eyes. I believe that you two have made your point, and I think you both should get to bed, as it is rather late. After saying, "Hi to San," and kissing Naruto one last time, Hinata fled the alley and headed for the compound. Hiyashi following closely behind. Hiyashi did something Naruto would never have expected when he arrived at the alley's entrance. Before turning around once more to follow his daughter home, he turned around with the biggest smile on his face and gave Naruto a thumbs up wink. She pushed me against the wall so forcefully that I suffered a concussion, but at least my hair is long enough to serve as a cushion. When Naruto saw two things, he rubbed the back of his head and laughed. The first was the flush that spread across his face, making him feel as though it was on fire. The second was that he had handprints from where Hinata had held him too tightly, and when he looked, he noticed that his wrists hurt all right. He thought this aspect of her was amazing. Final flashback with a ton of D-ranked missions to keep everyone busy. The following few weeks flew by. Naruto's ability to manipulate chakras advanced to the point where he could start experimenting with combining different chakras naturally. This was done with cage bunchins to prevent any unfavorable mishaps. While the real Naruto practiced his sealing skills during this period, he used his time to brainstorm the most inventive ways to employ his Fuinjutsu in combat. Naruto began sparring with Hinata every morning and spent as much time as he could with her in addition to training and missions. He discovered that she could be a very competitive person when he bought her off, usually by offering her a date of her choosing because he wanted to get as much out of the sparring as she did. Naruto still didn't use a lot of chakra, and as a result, he left with numerous bruises. She was developing at an incredible rate, and she soon demonstrated that Neji wasn't the only Hyuga genius. All she needed was some motivation, which Naruto was very good at giving her. He had to deal with her team, particularly Kiba, as a result of spending so much time with her girlfriend. Rewind. At night, Naruto and Hinata were strolling hand in hand through the forest past the Hokage monument. silently enjoying each other's company in order to have a romantic picnic dinner with Hinata. Naruto wanted to take her to a remote clearing. Naruto saw that Kiba was pursuing the couple, likely with the intention of ruining their evening. As they had just passed the monument, anger flared inside Naruto, hardening his face. Why won't he just stop bothering us? He was arrogant in our day, to be sure, but now he's just acting like a jerk. Why he is so determined to interfere with one of the few joyful parts of my life is beyond me. Naruto, you must keep in mind that this is a completely different series of events than what we have experienced. All you need to do is demonstrate your seriousness, but take care not to offend him. He remains an heir to the clan. Don't worry, even if I truly want to harm one of my friends, I won't. Naruto's face caught Hinata's attention. He turned his head to face her as she paused and touched his cheek. Naruto, what's wrong? I want this to be a romantic evening, but that can't happen if something is bothering you. Even if she didn't like him, Naruto couldn't tell her that he was going to beat up one of her teammates. He couldn't be angry when he looked at the person who loved him unconditionally. He had to look into her eyes to get the anger off his face. He made a cage bunshin while grinning. The clone nodded and smiled, then sprinted away, saying, "You know what to do." The woman standing beside him caught Naruto's attention. "Don't worry, Hina-chan, he will take care of the intrusion. Let's go and enjoy ourselves, huh?" What he was hinting at was caught by Hinata. "Naruto-kun, you know I don't want you to start a fight with." When Naruto brought her in for a passionate kiss that escalated into a heated makeout session, she was silenced. Hinata was left in a trance-like state after Naruto broke the contact after a few minutes. "Ready to go?" she asked, nodding without further protest. On Konoha's periphery, the clone of Naruto had a small dog under his left arm and an unconscious Kiba slung across his back. Without being noticed, the clone ambushed Kiba and swiftly chopped the back of his neck. Additionally, he promptly applied a suppression seal to Akamaru, who did not handle his owner's knockout well. After dealing with both annoyances, the clone glared at the two intruders. Furious that they would deliberately damage his boss's relationship, he left the two of them at the Inuzuka compound after giving Kiba a hard punch to the face to deliver a message for when he woke up. Final flashback: after that incident, Kiba left the two of them alone for a while, but he wasn't the type to give up easily, and he was back to it within a week. He would almost always be taken care of by Naruto, and the cycle would continue. Naruto was not surprised when Sakura approached him for training a few days following the genin test. After carefully considering her training, Naruto determined that her physical strength was the first area she needed to focus on. In order to achieve this, he had her perform his physical regimen while holding a pair of 5-kilogram weights at her wrists and ankles. She would have grumbled about the circumstances, but after their morning workout, she barely had enough energy to complete the D-ranked missions with Team 7. Later in the day, Naruto clarified that she needed to increase her stamina and chakra reserves before she could start working on other types of training. He was using a lot more energy than she was because he didn't tell her that he was 20 times heavier than she was and that he wasn't using chakra to strengthen his muscles. Sakura had a lot more maturing to do before Naruto felt her reserves were strong enough to handle the training he had in mind, so he couldn't take the chance of teaching her about ninjutsu, genjutsu, or taijutsu. He waited for a few more weeks to go by before Sakura's training advanced to the point where he was sure she could defend herself in a battle. To make his point, Naruto entered the Hokage's office while feigning annoyance. "Oji-san, I want a harder mission. We're ninja, not babysitters, gardeners, or painters. We deserve a harder mission." Perhaps it was because of Kakashi's report that Naruto had started learning Fuinjutsu, self-taught no less, that the Hokage was surprisingly easily persuaded to issue a more difficult mission when it came to the elderly man. Naruto didn't give a damn and would take anything he could. "Fine, since you are so confident in your abilities, I will give you a C-ranked mission. Pack your bags. You all are going to be traveling to Nami no Kuni, Land of Waves, whilst guarding a bridge builder by the name of Tazuna." Excellent. Giddy with anticipation for the challenge that awaited him, Naruto thought. Sitting in the Hokage's office, Naruto and his group observed an elderly man being led into the room by a number of Anbu who were positioned all over the building. Naruto's heightened senses from spending so much time in contact with Kurama's chakra seemed to irritate him more than the other members of his team because the old man smelled strongly of alcohol. The builder started talking while Naruto was still dealing with the stench. "Hell, these are the kids that are supposed to protect me. They look like they barely know how to wipe their own asses." The Hokage's eyes narrowed just a bit. The Hokage was not going to allow this man to reprimand any of the shinobi in his village while he was still alive. "I assure you, this team will be more than capable for what you have described in the mission details." Across his chest, the elderly man simply folded his arms. "HMPF, whatever." The man left the room with enough attitude to make Sasuke blush. Naruto thought, Wow, I didn't remember him being such a jerk. I guess I was just happy to have been given a harder mission. The team was only informed that they would be gone for approximately 3 weeks and should pack appropriately during the rest of the meeting, which went without incident as a result. Each of them received sealing scrolls to store their gear and bags. Naruto raised his hand in defiance as the Hokage reached to hand him his scroll. Thanks but no thanks, I make my own scrolls, so they will be able to hold more, and I'll be able to make it so that I can put in food for cold storage, so save those scrolls for the other teams when they go on long missions. I'm good. Sarutobi gave Naruto a close look. And how did you manage to make a seal to allow for cold storage? That is beyond many of the Fuinjutsu masters in Konoha, yet you seem as if it's easier than forming hand seals. Naruto flashed a cheeky grin. Well, it's a secret. I might tell you someday, but I'll say this. Being alone for so long has given me tons of time to experiment with Fuinjutsu. The only limit there is to it is the person's creativity, so I figured that I should channel my creativity from pranks into something I could use. Alright, in order to reduce suspicion, I need to establish as much of a foundation for my use of Fuinjutsu as possible. Sarutobi observed for a few more moments before concluding that the current discussion would not reveal any more about Naruto's enigmatic Fuinjutsu advancement. Very well, Kakashi. Your team is to report to the front gates at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and if you are late I will personally take your precious book and make you watch as I set it on fire. Are we clear? The man paled at the thought of Kakashi's priceless book burning to death in the hands of a mad Sarutobi. Yes, Hokage-sama. I will be on time. His threat pleased the Hokage, who grinned. Then you are all dismissed. I suggest you all go pack now so as not to leave anything important behind. Other than that, you all have the evening off. Before departing the Hokage's office, the entire team bowed to him. When they left the building, they all went their separate ways in order to avoid being late. Kakashi went to pack and get into bed early. Sasuke left and, well, did whatever he did when Sasuke looked over his shoulder and saw no pink-haired girl following Sakura as she went to practice her ninjutsu and genjutsu skills. He felt a strange emptiness, but he brushed it off without giving it much thought. Naruto went to spend time with Hinata Hyuga, the most significant person in his life. When Naruto remembered how Kiba had harassed her, he was relieved to see her training alone without her team. He paused to observe for a short while. His presence was soon noticed, and he was forced to leave his perch when a kunai swooped past his head and leapt into the clearing in Hinata's direction. She instantly brightened and relaxed her facial features upon seeing him. She then rushed to embrace him tightly. Naruto-kun. What brings you here? I thought that you would be training with your team or doing missions. Naruto took a deep breath while bending his face down onto Hinata's head. Nah, we got a C-ranked mission. We leave tomorrow, but we will be gone for a little while, probably 2 to 3 weeks. After learning that Naruto would be gone for some time, Hinata ended the embrace and gave him a betrayed look. Why would you go away for a few weeks? I thought that we were going to go on a picnic this weekend. And why is it a C-ranked mission? Those are way too dangerous for a team that just graduated from the academy. Naruto forced his most defiant grin. I know, I'm sorry about that. Don't worry, you know how strong I am. There is no way someone could hurt me on a C-ranked mission. In a pout, Hinata turned her back on Naruto and folded her arms across her chest with a sigh. Naruto approached her from behind, putting his arms around her stomach and whispering in her ear. How about this? Since I won't be here this weekend, let's just go on the picnic tonight. I have everything set up, plus I think that a moonlit date is better than one in the day. I already cleared it with your father, and I just so happened to stop by the store and picked up some food. Hinata eased herself into his arms. Sigh. How do you always know the best way to make me not mad at you? It's almost like you know exactly how I'll react to every sort of situation. Naruto signaled for her to get on his back so he could carry her piggyback style after releasing her from his embrace and squatting with his arms extended behind him. I just know you too well, I guess. With a giggle, Hinata climbed onto his back, and Naruto leapt off at a high speed as soon as she was safe. The sun had just set, and the sky was a rainbow of purples, reds, oranges, and yellows as he ran for several minutes until they reached the top of the Hokage monument. While Naruto unpacked everything, including one of his specially made seals, and brought out hot tea and cold drinks, Hinata got off Naruto's back and simply gazed at the scenery. Naruto was not dubbed the Orange Flash for nothing. It only took a few minutes to get everything ready. During their dinner, the two had a quiet conversation about Hinata's training and the last few missions they had been on. To her father's surprise, after a few weeks of training, she had been able to learn the fundamentals of the Hake Rokuhuion Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms technique. Naruto, who was well aware of the devastating impact that technique had on the intended target, was also impressed. All he could conclude was that Hinata had the most untapped potential from birth, one that would equal Neji's, if not exceed it. He was unaware that Hinata was only able to do it following the numerous spars with Naruto, as their spars allowed her to reach her maximum potential. They watched the stars come out while lying on the ground together after finishing their dinner. As Naruto pointed out various constellations, they simply enjoyed each other's company before they left. They sat there for an hour or two, although Naruto was disappointed that the farewell didn't go as smoothly as the previous one. Naruto truly enjoyed the abruptness of those kinds of moments, knowing full well what lay ahead in the coming weeks. He ran back into the forest to practice Funshinsu as soon as Hinata was back inside her house. 9 a.m. the following morning, Kakashi surprised everyone by being the first person at the gate in the morning. In fact, he had gone to bed just after 7 the previous evening, so he had woken up long before the sun had risen as a precaution. The three genin mentally noted that they would threaten his book whenever a future deadline was anticipated. The team left the gates when Tazuna arrived a little later. Naruto realized after several hours of walking that they were getting close to the demon brother's trap, which he had meticulously prepared some time ago. Despite being aware that they were entering a trap, Kakashi chose to give the three time to see if they could think of a way to avoid it. Naruto turned to his team after they had passed the puddle on the ground. "Hey guys, you go on ahead. I gotta go to the bathroom real quick, I'll catch up in a jiffy." Sasuke gave a little chirp. "Don't get lost, Dobi, I don't want to have to come find your ass later." "Wouldn't dream of it, Teme. Who would babysit you if I got lost?" Pulling down his pants and urinating all over the ninja concealed in the puddle, Naruto ran back to the puddle in the road without acknowledging the HN. The ninja just didn't know how to react, in part because he was furious but mostly because he never would have imagined that he would be peed on while on an assassination mission. The ninja emerged from the puddle with the intention of murdering the boy for his egregious insult. As the blonde boy left, the boy appeared to be strangled by the ninja's chain, which broke multiple bones in his spine. He let go of the boy's chains, satisfied that his job was done, and he fell to the ground, but the moment the body hit the ground, a cloud of smoke burst forth. The ninja turned around as the boy began to speak after searching for him and hearing a faint voice behind him. "Hey, gotcha fuinjutsu, for a bodybindingu, full body binding." This seal was at full power, unlike Naruto's first seal on Kakashi during the bell test, and breaking it would require a lot of chakra, more than this Chunin could muster while placing a tag on the ninja's head. Naruto observed the ninja's struggle to escape. Fuinjutsu. Kyoto Sutorei Hikantena, power storage container. Just before he was about to faint, the ninja looked up as the boy took off the tag. He gasped as he felt his strength being rapidly depleted. "This seal is meant to drain your chakra and store it. Imagine, if you will, it acts as a battery, and should I wish it I could draw upon this tag for chakra sometime in the future should I run out." The Chunin could hardly remain conscious, but, how is this possible? I've never heard of such a seal before. Naruto smiled slyly at him. "That is because it is my own creation. Funshinsu is only limited by the user's imagination." When Naruto returned to his team after swiftly knocking the ninja unconscious, he discovered that Kakashi had already dealt with the second ninja. Everyone appeared to tense up as Naruto drew closer, but they quickly relaxed when they saw the familiar face. "Sorry about that, guys. This mist ninja attacked me after I accidentally peed all over him, so needless to say he was a little pissed, but hey, better pissed off than pissed on, right guys?" It was Kakashi who spoke first. "Well, I guess there is no doubt that this is Naruto. How were you able to take him out though? And with such ease?" "Well, after I went to the bathroom I started asking why there was a puddle on the road when it hadn't rained in well over a week, so I carefully did a kawarimi substitution with a cage bunshin, and when he thought he had me in his chain attack I hit him with a binding seal which held him down. I put one of my Kyoto Sutorei Hikantena on him, which drained all his chakra for me to use at a later time." The last part made everyone's eyes widen, especially Kakashi's. He had never heard of such a technique, and even a cage could be brought to his knees by its applications. The thought of what else this young genin would create in the future made him a little afraid. "I must say, Naruto, I am quite impressed that you were able to devise such a technique by yourself." Naruto gave him a quick smile. "What can I say? I have had a lot of time to myself growing up." Sasuke simply gazed at Naruto, amazed that this Dobi and this last living loser had so easily dispatched a mist Chunin for him. It simply didn't add up, so something wasn't right. Kakashi decided that they should move again, so he didn't have much time to pout. "Anyway, Naruto, since you were gone, we managed to get some information from Tazuna here. According to the information he provided, this has now become a B-ranked mission, maybe even an A-ranked one. Sakura and Sasuke have already answered, but my question to you is whether or not you want to continue." "Hell yeah. Let's tie up these losers, send a message back to Konoha, and continue on to Wave Country." Kakashi wore a mask and grinned. "Alright, let's get a move on then after we tie up these ninja." The days that followed were fairly uneventful. They avoided conflict with the majority of the bandits who would have blocked their path by walking along the main road. Naruto just took the time to consider other ways he could use Fuinjutsu because he had already mastered most of the finer techniques of chakra, even though he could never be finished with chakra control. Kakashi used this time to explain the inner meanings of chakra and how they can be applied in various ways. Only after a week had gone by did Naruto get ready for his fight with Zabuza, ready to test his teammates' limits and strengthen them. Just in case something went wrong, Naruto relaxed the gravity seals he had applied to himself. He needed to be prepared for any surprise attack Gato might launch. In particular, he needed to watch out for Zabuza, who had taken longer to hit this time. Naruto recalled the time he had put gravity seals on himself to eliminate the weights that would otherwise be difficult to remove while fighting in a battle. A small amount of chakra could instantly weaken the gravity seal, allowing a punch to be delivered much more quickly. Alternatively, the seal could be strengthened to deliver a kick with far more force than usual. The entire group became tense as a dense mist filled the field they were walking through while Naruto was daydreaming when the missing Nin Momochi Zabuza attacked Kakashi. Believing him to be the biggest threat, Kakashi ordered the genin to assemble around Tazuna. Naruto wouldn't let this opportunity to try out some different Fuinjutsu pass him by, so he created a few cage bunshin to protect Tazuna after the two got into a vicious fight and used numerous high-level jutsus. Sasuke, Sakura, let's get in there and help out Kakashi. Let's show this Zabuza what we can really do. Sasuke grinned. I like the sound of that Dobi. I just hope your cage bunshin don't get scared and run away. Naruto laughed. Don't worry Teme, they are more than able to take care of themselves. Just don't get too full of yourself out there and make me come rescue your sorry ass. HN. A startled Zabuza was about to slit Kakashi's chest with his enormous sword when the three genin charged, but Sasuke managed to deflect the weapon by trying to kick Zabuza's sword-wielding arm by striking Zabuza's hands with the kick. Sasuke prevented his sensei from suffering a severe injury. Unfortunately for Sasuke, Zabuza was one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. For a reason he turned around and kicked Sasuke hard in the gut, sending him flying, using the momentum from his enormous sword. Sakura now! Yelled Sasuke as he took off again. When Zabuza looked up, he saw a pink-haired Kunoichi coming down quickly and hurling multiple kunai at his head. Zabuza was taken aback when the kunai started to descend toward his body at a rate that was faster than gravity could possibly achieve. They're going far too quickly for a mere genin. It almost seems as though hold on is that the kunai's gravity seal? I'm done for. If that hits me, I must leave this place. Zabuza leapt back to where Naruto was waiting for him. Naruto tried his best not to show more skill than was expected of a genin in their brief taijutsu battle, but Zabuza sensed the boy behind him and twisted his body to face the new opponent. Without Zabuza noticing, Naruto had managed to apply multiple inactive gravity seals to the Kabikirabocho, the sword he was using, even though he was unable to strike the missing nin directly. The seals gradually began to travel up the sword and down the handle to imprint themselves onto various areas of Zabuza's body with the addition of some of Naruto's chakra. Unaware of the tiny seals creeping up his arms and legs, Zabuza kicked Naruto into Sakura, who was sprinting in his direction, knocking them both away after another minute or so. With little effort, Zabuza defeated a renowned Chunin of Konoha and his whole genin team, and he started to laugh with triumph. You were all pathetic. I expected more from you. Sharingan Kakashi, why don't you stop playing games and fight me for real before I start killing your team one by one? Naruto was the first to speak, which surprised everyone. It is only common knowledge that one doesn't reveal their trump card until the moment they need it most, and besides, we have already won. You lose, just give up. In a crouch of laughter, Zabuza gripped his stomach. Ha 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 ha. Oh man kid, that was a good one. What makes you think you've won? You are just some kid who got too excited after being in their first real battle. With a sly smile, Naruto raised his hands in a seal of chakra molding after saying, this is why I think we've won. Naruto then turned on Zabuza's numerous seals. Fuinjutsu. Menaminai Moberu Juryoku Shiru, Invisible Mobile Gravity Seal. Zabuza was unable to raise a single finger as his body grew heavier than gold, causing him to fall to his hands and knees. All of his chakra had to be directed toward his blood vessels and essential organs in order for them to continue operating normally. He managed to mutter while continuing to stare at the ground, how did you do that? It was easy. Your huge sword blocks your vision for a split second, and that is all I need to place one of my seals. Sure, just one wouldn't be enough to take you down, but 20 of them? Not even the strongest cage would be able to move properly with that many gravity seals on his body. In Kumogakure, the Raikage sneezed Senbon needles emerged from the tree line and lodged themselves in Zabuza's neck, putting him in a coma just as he opened his mouth to speak again to welcome the group. A mist Anbu emerged from the trees. Thank you Konoha Shinobi, I appreciate your assistance in taking down the missing Nin Momochi Zabuza, and I can assure you he will be brought to justice for his crimes. The Mizukage will be very grateful for your assistance in bringing down such a notorious criminal. Now I must retrieve the body. After giving the Anbu a cautious look, Kakashi let the corpse go with him by nodding his head and letting out a sigh, knowing that the next battle would be a crucial point in Sasuke's development and that he might be able to save Haku and Zabuza. Naruto had to have a lot of willpower to keep his mouth shut and not speak or attempt to stop Haku. Gosh, if I had lowered my gravity seals, Kurama, I could have easily ended that. Isn't 10 times the weight a bit excessive, in your opinion? No, this is your only option for containing yourself without raising suspicions. How would your friends react if you went all out? You cannot use the Rasengan or any other jutsu you have been practicing until the Chunin exams. For the same reason, at least you can use the fact that you met Jiraiya as an excuse. This charade still seems foolish to me. Surely Kakashi would understand? Even if he did, I don't want him to know until he can solve it on his own. Remember, that was one of the requirements of my training. Yeah, I do recall. In any case, he will figure it out soon enough. You know, he is too intelligent for his own goon. With a mixture of annoyance and satisfaction, Kakashi turned to his students. Well, it appears that the three of you have mastered the collaborative element of missions. I appreciate you saving me from Zabuza's sword, Sasuke, but I'm shocked that you would jump in so carelessly. You've improved a lot in your support role. Sakura, with my normal eye, I could hardly follow your kunai, and you would have defeated him if the sun hadn't been out and he couldn't see well. Naruto, you never cease to amaze me with your masterful use of gravity seals. As Kakashi gave them some praise, the three genin appeared to be very happy with themselves. Well, now that the compliments are over, I never want you three to pit yourself against an enemy like Zabuza again. Kakashi said, no matter how well you three collaborate or what plan you have, you never take a chance on someone else's life. Dooming your comrade to death would be equivalent to betraying them. Not to mention that, aside from a few weak cage bunshin, you left our charge totally defenseless. Let's fetch Tazuna now and bring him to his home. A few hours later, everyone was exhausted from the crazy amount of walking they had done over the past week, and they all had more than a few blisters to show for it. That night, the group reached the bridge builder's house and rested well. The group worked on chakra control the following week, and to the surprise of Kakashi and Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto could already pass the fundamental control tests. Sasuke began by running at the tree, focusing chakra to his feet, but he only made it about a quarter of the way up before his chakra flared and he lost his footing. He pushed against the tree and twisted his body to land on the ground perfectly. Thus began the tree walking exercise. Kakashi turned to face his student and said, well done, Sasuke. However, if you don't focus throughout, your chakra will keep flaming in that manner and you won't be able to hold onto the ground. You're up next, Naruto. With a sly smile, Naruto put his hands behind his head and walked languidly in the direction of the tree. I'm going to at least flaunt myself a little if I'm going to perform these pointless exercises. Hey guys, you look pretty small from all the way up here, Naruto said, yawning as he calmly walked the entire length of the tree and paused to hang upside down from one of the branches at the top. Since I'm doing well here, may I go train on my own, Kakashi-sensei? I want to go practice my Fuinjutsu. Sure, go ahead Naruto, just be back before dusk, Kakashi said, momentarily stunned. Kakashi sighed, turned to his other students, and saw that both of their faces displayed a mix of confusion, jealousy, and disbelief as Naruto leapt away, leaving his team stunned. How did he do that? Sasuke-kun couldn't get up a quarter of the tree, but he did it without any sweat. There is no way that Naruto is better than... Sakura was trying to figure out how the village idiot was so skilled at chakra control when she remembered her conversation with Naruto. Don't think like that. I have to treat Sasuke-kun like any other person and show him my own strength. Enough of this fangirl crap, she added. With chakra wrapped around her feet, Sakura ran to the tree and ascended it all, breathing heavily and perspiring lightly as she did so. Sasuke's disbelief was almost as great when he saw her as when he watched Naruto climb. Kakashi claims he could hardly follow her, but I didn't see anything. It was like she was a blur. How strong is she? Great, now not only is the Dobi better than me, but Sakura too. What is this? She was never this good before. And what was that crap with Zabuza? Though there was clearly space for improvement, Kakashi was happy with his student's development. Sasuke, I want you to keep doing this exercise until you have it down pat. Don't lose hope. Sakura managed to climb the tree, but she can control it more easily because she has limited chakra reserves. All you need to do is learn how to do it to increase your reserves. Sakura, I want you to keep doing this exercise for as long as you can. Now where did Naruto go? His ridiculously large amount of chakra should make control exercises difficult, but he has already mastered this exercise. I wonder how long he has been training on his own. Kakashi turned to face the direction Naruto had leapt off to after hearing two loud highs. Alongside Naruto, while the real Naruto was working on his Fuinjutsu with Kurama, he actually called forth 60 Kage Bunshin and had them practice each elemental chakra manipulation, with 10 of them practicing the leaf on the forehead chakra control exercise. Over the course of the following few days, this training schedule persisted, with Naruto training alone while Sasuke and Sakura worked with Kakashi to improve their chakra working abilities. After dispelling his clones and becoming exhausted from chakra exhaustion, Naruto was resting in a clearing early in the morning for only a few minutes when he sensed a presence approaching him that he instantly recognized. "Greetings. Ninja-kun, what are you doing?" "I'm training my skills as a shinobi so that I can protect those close to me from anyone who would try and harm them," Naruto said, glancing up at the boy before responding. Naruto's resolve seemed to surprise the boy, who said, "That is a very honorable goal you have." "Indeed, but it seems to me that I am merely a tool. My sensei uses me to demonstrate his ability to strengthen 3 genin, my friends use me to defend themselves, and the leader of my village uses me to complete missions." Once more, Haku was at a loss for words. "But aren't they your beloved people?" "I doubt that I would be used as a tool by precious people," said Naruto, frowning and crossing his arms over his chest. "A person who genuinely cares about me, in my opinion, would view me more as a member of their family than as a tool to be used however they please. In any case, I need to return to my training. See you." Seeing that Haku was now struggling with the meaning of his own life, Naruto got up and left him to think about the conversation. In order to deal with the shinobi sent to kill Tezuna's family, Naruto purposefully overslept on the day of their rematch with Zabuza and Haku on the bridge. The week went by rather quickly, and Naruto left soon after his team headed for the bridge and went into the surrounding trees, concentrating on the readings he was getting from the hired goons. "I believe now is a good time to practice some of my new jutsu, Kurama." "All right. But proceed with caution. We still don't know what happens when we mix different chakra elements like this. Remember that it's all theory, and we have no idea if it will work. That's why I said now is a good time to try something new." When Naruto leapt on the branch in front of the group, the assassin's leader brought him back to reality. "Whoa, this brat of a ninja has to be dealt with first. This job must be the most annoying thing ever." Perfect, was Naruto's response as the rest of the team joined him in laughing. The group of men were looking at Naruto when he said, "Well, too bad, this will be your last job. Oh, and I suggest you look up." While the real Naruto was on the ground collecting chakra for his next jutsu, they all looked up to see Kage Bunshin descend from above and kick them in the stomach, sending them all to the same location on the forest floor. Naruto slammed his hands down. "Doden, deep grave, or Fukai Haka no Jutsu." The group leader, who had actually faced shinobi before, was perplexed as to how this child could dig a hole that deep so quickly, but he had little time to worry about it as Naruto continued his string of jutsu. All 4 ninja fell into the hole, which was nearly 10 meters deep. After arching his back, Naruto started to pour lava into the hole in a vomiting motion. "Yoden. Rutsubo no Jutsu. Lava release. Melting pot." Even though Naruto was ready for it, he still detested having to take a life, regardless of who it was, and the screams emanating from the crater made him shiver with memories of the past. "Don't let it bother you, Naruto. They have killed enough innocent people to deserve this kind of punishment. I'm not saying that we should administer justice, but you need to consider how many people you are saving." "I understand, but that doesn't make things any easier. I would try to talk them out of this, but I know they wouldn't listen. I must now put an end to this." Naruto collected chakra once more in preparation for completing his jutsu string. Doden. Chikyu Teikoku Sogi, Earth Imperial Funeral. The screams of the men inside were muffled by a massive slab of earth that slid over the holes, opening. Naruto sighed briefly as he prepared to go to the bridge to assist his team, but he was struck by a wave of exhaustion and he reeled back on his heels, applied the chakra absorption seal he had used on the demon brothers to himself, reversed the flow to restore his lost chakra, and then hurried as quickly as he could to the bridge. He immediately pushed the disgust aside and shifted his perspective to celebrate his accomplishment. "Kurama, it really did work," he exclaimed in his head. "Hey, I guess it does. I guess that my theory was correct now. Are you glad you listened to me?" Kurama said, shaking at the volume of Naruto's voice. "I guess I need to work on my chakra manipulation to decrease the amount of chakra used, but even so, I can't believe your theory was correct." "You bet I am, but I really wasn't expecting the exhaustion that came with it. It felt like I just threw 5 Rasen shurikens in succession." Naruto is 4 years old in this 8-year flashback. After working up a sweat in one of the many training fields he frequently visited, Naruto took a break under a tree's shade and soon found himself dozing off and facing Kurama. Since you can now move and practice chakra manipulations, I think it's time to step up your training. Naruto, before we start your 8-year training program, I think I should share a small theory I developed about Keki Genkais that I've been working on for a while. What is that kind of theory? Well, I started thinking about what made Keki Genkais so special, and I think that it's only special because it allows a person to develop more than one elemental affinity, which makes them able to use certain types of advanced nature jutsu. Granted, this doesn't apply to certain physical ones like the Sharingan or Kimamero's Shikatsumiku, but I think it applies to those that deal with elements. This means that if you were to reach a certain level of efficiency in chakra manipulation, I believe that you should be able to replicate those advanced jutsus to some extent. That makes sense, but I never considered it. Would that mean I could use the Tsuchikage's Jinten, Dust Release, or Roshi's Yoden? Roshi is the Jinchuriki of the Four Tails, Son Goku. Although these wouldn't be as powerful as the real thing, you should be able to use them with some degree of proficiency with practice, and you might even be able to combine them in new ways. I'm saying you could use any of them as long as they don't require a physical alteration to your body. I'm furious with you, Kurama. Let's get this started. Slow down, Naruto. I'm referring to years from now. Oh no, let's just get started. Final flashback. When Naruto reached the bridge, he saw that Sakura was helping Sasuke fight off Haku, that Kakashi, who had already shown his Sharingan eye, was fighting with Zabuza, and that Tazuna was hiding in the bridge's corner. Naruto chose to deal with Haku first, deciding to knock him out to save his life. Zabuza then used his thick mist jutsu once more, signaling to Haku to trap all 3 genin inside his Hyoden. Hyoro no Jutsu, Ice Prison Jutsu, and that Haku started throwing Senbon needles at each of the 3, making them attempt futilely to avoid. I guess I'll have to protect them both. Oh my god, this is so different from the last time. Why in the world is Sakura in here? Naruto turned to his teammate with the raven hair after a few fortunate escapes and said, Sasuke, we can't see these needles because they move so quickly. To help us anticipate their direction, you must use your Sharingan. We'll all be dead if you don't get your second Tomo. While avoiding more needles, Sasuke gave Naruto a furious glare and said, Shut up, Dobi. What do you suppose I'm attempting to accomplish? How about pulling out one of your new, fancy seals? You pretended to be tough all week, and now you're saying I need to get stronger? I've had enough of feeling less than you. All I want is strength. I simply. His eyesight suddenly became many times magnified, and the needles appeared to be moving much more slowly, slow enough for him to see with his eyes and make predictions, and he stopped talking when he experienced an odd chakra surge. Sasuke's expression brightened. I succeeded. I understand. I see them. Sakura, be careful. When Sasuke opened his eyes and saw that he was on top of Sakura in a very lewd position, he blushed unconsciously. He quickly got up and turned away from Sakura after he tackled her to the ground while needles flew where they had been standing. The hell was that? I don't blush. That is for the stupid girls who follow me around to do. Sasuke scolded himself in his mind. What the, did he just blush? Yes. I can't believe Naruto was right. This is actually working. I just have to keep going with it. Sakura thought of something else. They were startled out of their reverie by Naruto, who said, If you lovebirds are finished, I think we should focus on the problem at hand. Together, Sakura and Sasuke said, Right, all right, folks. I understand how Haku travels from mirror to mirror. He leaps between them with lightning speed. We'll treat him the same way we treated Kakashi during the bell training if he does this. Hi, leave. Assuming Sakura was the weakest member of the group, Haku made the decision to act before they had a chance to come up with a plan. Just as he was about to strike her, Naruto leapt up from beneath the ground and briefly grabbed Haku's legs, applying 2 gravity seals to them and temporarily pinning him to the ground. Good thing Zabuza-sama taught me how to break these types of seals. This should only hold me for a few moments before I break them, Haku said, glancing down at Naruto, who gave him a smile before vanishing in a puff of smoke. A Kage Bunshin? He asked, glancing at his immobile legs. Haku heard Sasuke launch his attack just as he was breaking the seals. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Grand Fireball. The edges of his clothing were singed as Haku barely had time to jump up and avoid the fireball, making sure to jump toward one of his mirrors, but just as he thought he was safe, he looked up to see Sakura falling toward him and landing a devastating punch to his face, sending him flying to the ground, rendering him unconscious from the attack and ending the Ice Prison Jutsu. They both sensed the end of Haku's jutsu as the fight between Zabuza and Kakashi was coming to a close. with Kakashi preparing to call in his ninja dogs to restrain the swordsman Zabuza. Believing his student had killed the three, ended his mist jutsu, and they were shocked to see his student tied up and unconscious, but even more shocked to see Zabuza's boss, Gato, at the other end of the bridge with all his friends. "Well, it appears that your former employer no longer intends to pay you to complete your mission," Kakashi said, turning to face Zabuza. "Indeed, it appears that he wants you to pass away with the bridge builder, but neither you nor I seem to want that." "I think we agree for once, Sharingan Kakashi," Zabuza said with a laugh. "I didn't mean to pun." Kakashi grinned and said, "How about we look after Gato? This will be resolved later." The two looked at the sizable contingent of hired goons and said, "Agreed." Gato and his men had little chance against the elite Chunin, as they were all brutally dealt with, leaving Gato alone with Zabuza. Zabuza's sword lived up to its name as the meat cleaver, and Gato had no chance in hell of surviving, so the three genin were happy to just watch their sensei take care of the goons. The mercenaries and Gato himself were soon defeated, and Kakashi and Zabuza made the decision to fight to the death, no longer as part of a mission but out of pride. After a few minutes of fighting, Kakashi used his nin dogs to restrain Zabuza before launching a Raikiri. Kakashi charged Zabuza Sharingan, ready to kill him, but was stopped just before he could do so by a scathing shout from one of his students. "Cease!" As their fellow genin approached the Junins, Sakura and Sasuke couldn't help but stare, wondering what Kakashi might be thinking as he turned to face his blonde student and let his Raikiri fade. With a kunai in hand, Kakashi turned back to Zabuza and said, "Naruto, he is too dangerous to be left alive. If he escapes he could kill too many innocent people." "Kakashi, wait, he isn't a raging monster," Naruto said, placing a hand on his kunai and drawing it down. "He still has people he cares about, even if he is." Naruto saw Zabuza glance at Haku, and Zabuza saw Naruto observing him. "Isn't that correct, Zabuza-san?" Zabuza became agitated and said, "Stop it, kid, for me. That boy over there is merely a tool. A way to get what I want. I'm not interested in him." "You and I both know that isn't true," Naruto said, shaking his head. "If it was, why would you defend him so strongly? He would have passed away long ago. If you truly didn't care about him, then why did you reduce your mist technique? You wanted to see how Haku was doing because you felt his mirrors break, not to see if he had killed us. What would happen if I lowered my mist? Why would you give a damn? You don't give a damn about him, and you certainly don't care about me." Naruto approached Zabuza and met his eyes, which were not those of a child but rather those of a man who had witnessed the deaths of all his friends around him and who vowed to stop at nothing to save a life, even if it was an enemy's. "I do care. Zabuza, the ninja system will be peaceful because of me, even if it means bearing the entire burden myself. I will put an end to Shinobi's hatred, and I'll begin by freeing you from your hatred right now." In a final act of atonement for Haku, Zabuza gave his life because he was at a loss for words, could no longer maintain his false bravado, and knew he was too exhausted to defeat Kakashi and his team. "Kill me if you have to, just spare Haku," Zabuza said, lowering himself to his knees. "He is not deserving of the life he has led with me. He is worthy of a better life. One in a tranquil village surrounded by loved ones. Do what you must with me." "Well, you see, Konoha and Mist aren't really on good terms with the whole Keki Genkai purge and the Civil War," said Kakashi this time. "Therefore, you would be imprisoned for a few weeks and possibly subjected to some interrogation, but otherwise unharmed, if you said, 'Come back to Konoha.' But since Haku isn't listed in any bingo books that I'm aware of, he ought to be able to join the Konoha Shinobi Hell. Zabuza, if you prove yourself, the Hokage will probably find you a job if you're cleared. What are your thoughts?" Zabuza nodded. "I already told you, as long as the boy is taken care of, I will submit myself to any punishment you all decide." "Very well, it appears that we will have 2 more people returning to Konoha with us," said Kakashi. Putting away his kunai, "I want you to limit Zabuza and Haku's chakra by applying chakra absorption seals on them as a precaution, Naruto, until we tell the Hokage about their predicament and he can explain it to everyone. The seal will demonstrate your submission, and the first impression you guys make will be the most significant." The team remained for a few more days to clean up any remaining members of Gato's small gang of thugs and to make sure Tazuna and his family wouldn't face any reprisals. Tazuna finished the bridge, but it still needed a name, so Inari came up with the Great Naruto Bridge, which the young blonde was obviously happy with. Soon after, the group started returning to Konoha, while Haku was being interviewed by Naruto, Sakura, and to some extent Sasuke about his past, his strengths, his jutsu, and how much better his new life in Konoha would be. On their way to the Hokage's office, the guards in Konoha didn't pay much attention to Kakashi and his group, but they were shocked to see mass murderer Zabuza. Naruto saw that Zabuza seemed to glare at the guards and the people they passed, clearly trying to convey that he wasn't going to be pushed around in this strange village. Gazing up at Zabuza, Naruto said, "Don't worry, Zabuza-san. You'll get used to it after people get to know you. Things will improve significantly." Not everyone was looking at Zabuza as he scanned the crowds. In fact, it appeared that they were glaring more at Naruto than at him. "Based on my reputation, it appears that they are somewhat afraid of me, but they appear to despise you according to their eyes. They would tear you apart if they had the chance. Why is that, child?" This was also noticed by Sakura and Sasuke, who were now paying close attention to what Naruto would say next. "Hell if I know, but stick around long enough, and I'm sure you'll find out." It was easy for them to get to the office, but it took some serious empty threats and the Hokage himself's promise of consequences to get past the Anbu guards. When Kakashi ran into another group of Anbu on his way to the Hokage's office, he demanded an audience with the Hokage. Even though Momochi Zabuza was following him, the Anbu had no choice but to band together and follow the group into the office in case the man tried anything. At least as well as it could have gone, the meeting with the Hokage went fairly well. Zabuza was to report to Ibiki and Anko and provide whatever information he knew about the current civil war and the Purge of the Mist, as well as any criminal contacts he may have, though he told Sarutobi that no interrogation techniques would be used. Zabuza would then be imprisoned for a while until he could demonstrate his loyalty to Konoha, while Haku would be permitted to join the Konoha shinobi team without being asked. Sarutobi got up after all the conditions for Zabuza's surrender were worked out. "Excellent, I'm happy Haku was able to join us as a Konoha shinobi, and he did so just in time." Even though Naruto already knew the answer, Sasuke, Sakura, and Haku all asked at once. "In time for what, Hokage-sama?" Hiruzen smiled and turned to face them, saying, "Of course, the Chunin exams." 2 weeks after their return, Uchiha compound. While lying on his futon, Sasuke was thinking back on the events of the previous few weeks. He was expecting that to be the appropriate course of action for an elite of his status, so it wasn't the fact that he would be taking the Chunin exams that bothered him. The fact that he had witnessed Naruto, the same youngster who had once skipped class to vandalize the Hokage monument, fight on level ground with one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and even defeat him was what had truly annoyed him. It simply doesn't make sense. Sakura finally starts to leave me alone, and now Naruto is beginning to gain strength. Is Naruto going to tell me that he has a girlfriend next? Hinata sneezes somewhere in the Hyuga compound. "I need to know what's going on in this area." After stepping off his futon, Sasuke prepared for one of his unique lessons with Kakashi. Kakashi started holding special training sessions with Sasuke to train his new eyes after he unlocked the second tomo of his Sharingan. In addition, Kakashi said he would give them a few weeks off to train on their own during the weeks before the Chunin exams. In order to train as much as possible for the impending trials, Sasuke hurried out of his house to make sure Kakashi would be there. He hurried to training field 6 an hour or so late. Field of training 29 to prevent anyone from unintentionally stumbling upon them. Naruto, Hinata, and Sakura were placed in the training field that was farthest from Konoha for the majority of the morning. Naruto had Hinata and Sakura spar while simultaneously giving both Kunoichi advice on how to get better at their forms. Sakura's taijutsu and genjutsu skills had significantly improved over the past few weeks, although not nearly as much strain as Naruto put himself through. The training weights she wore were still fairly heavy, nearly doubling her weight. Despite her improvement, Hinata, who had been sparring with Naruto for many years, was still able to handle her with ease. She was able to master the Kaden and get close to the Hake Rokuhuyan Sho, 64 palm strikes. Under his guidance, Naruto was unaware that Hinata was also tinkering with her chakra and creating her own jutsu, but only she was aware of it. Sakura was unable to endure any more punishment following the 67th defeat. "I feel like my limbs are going to fall off. Naruto, why can't I take off these stupid weights when I spar? I'm never going to land so much as a hit with these things on." Naruto massaged his nose bridge. "If you take off your weights too early on in the fight, the enemy may have enough time to counter and get used to your heightened speed. If you save it until they feel confident in their victory, then you can deal a psychological blow and catch the enemy by surprise. Being a ninja is about stealth and concealing one's true strength until the last possible second." Sakura gave an eye roll. Whatever. Hey, I've been meaning to ask, why can't I use gravity seals like you do? I mean, they would be much more convenient, wouldn't they? I mean, they can be lowered without warning, so if you were to, do a roundhouse kick, and then increase the weight in your leg, you could add more power to your kick. Naruto gave a headshake. "You were correct, you can do so, and I can assure you that it does have a devastating effect. It comes at a price, however. If you were to slip up and accidentally add too much chakra to the seal and increase the weight too much, then you could change the trajectory of the kick and allow the enemy to dodge. and perhaps end the fight before you would be able to change it back. So it isn't that you can't use the gravity seal, it's just that I don't think you are ready to handle it yet. Plus, the whole idea of gravity seals are very dangerous, especially someone without the right amount of chakra. Well, if what you are saying is true, then you would have to have the chakra control of a mid-level Chunin to handle yourself in fights with the seal as you do. Given the direction of the discussion, Hinata chose to interrupt, saying, "That isn't the case. Naruto-kun has just had a lot of time to get used to the seals. Years in fact. I just don't think he wants you to try learning something so potentially dangerous before the Chunin exams." Sakura seemed to understand Hinata's reasoning and decided to drop the issue. Naruto nodded his head in Hinata's direction, appreciating her ability to protect the secret, or at least one of his secrets, that he had chosen to share with her the previous evening. Flashback to last night. The group disbanded after Haku and the Mist Village were formally registered as Konoha Shinobi, and Zabuza was removed to be interrogated about his past. Haku was shown Sakura's new apartment, which just so happened to be the room one floor below Naruto's, by Sakura as usual. Kakashi had vanished, and Sasuke went to train, as he always did since Naruto was alone for the evening. He thought it would be a good idea to pay his Hinaheim a visit. Hiyashi gave him another odd wink and a thumbs up when he picked her up from her house. When he asked Hinata, who became a bright red when he brought up the strange behavior, Naruto didn't think too much about it and chose to just say it. "Brat, are you faking it or are you really this dumb?" What her father is trying to say is painfully clear. Naruto grimaced as pictures that he would have expected to see in one of Jiraiya's notorious books raced through his mind. "Kurama, you need to clear your head. We are only 13. The civilian world is not like this. Because shinobi's lives are so dangerous, they frequently marry young. You do realize what happens after marriage, don't you? Lay off Kami Kurama. It will not occur in the near future. In addition, I have no doubt that Hinata would never carry out that, and if I attempted such a foolish stunt, Hiyashi would have my head. Brat, I don't think you give that man enough credit. He's a closet pervert who could compete with Kakashi, and I think he would be perfectly okay with." "Enough, Kurama. Don't ruin Hinata and my date. All right, let me just go back to sleep." Naruto was prodded in the side by Hinata. Naruto-kun? Are you okay? You spaced out for a little and it looked like you were having an argument with someone?" Naruto gave a sheepish smile. "Sorry Hina-chan, I was just thinking about some things. We should get going though, and I made some plans at the restaurant in town for tonight." Given that the sun was already starting to set, Naruto swiftly took Hinata's hand and sprinted to their destination in full speed. The owner himself came out when they arrived and informed the two that they were completely packed and could not fit anymore. Both Naruto and Hinata sensed the man's resentment and rage in his words, and although Naruto was accustomed to it, Hinata was perplexed. Naruto knew he had no chance of getting in because he had gone through this charade too many times. Naruto swiftly turned around and headed back the way they had come after deciding that it would be best if they simply went to his favorite ramen stand. Naruto turned around with a curious expression on his face, but he already knew what Hinata was going to ask when she abruptly stopped and took her hand away from him when they were about halfway to their destination. Her arms were folded across Hinata's chest. "Naruto, I want you to be honest with me. For the past few months, whenever I am with you in public, we always receive angry glares from most of the villagers. The older ones, at least, even some of the older Chunin, look at you with disgust. At first I thought that it was from all the pranks you pulled, but then I realized that this was a deep-seated hatred of you. Like they hated the fact that you were breathing the same air they were. What is going on?" Even though he knew it would be difficult for her, Naruto saw that there was no way he could get out of this situation without telling her that he was a Jinchuriki. With a sigh, he extended his hand. "Well, I guess I have no choice. Take my hand. I'll shunshin us somewhere private." Hinata took his hand once more, and a moment later they were standing atop Minato's head, the Hokage monument. Taking Hinata's two hands, Naruto gazed into her eyes. "Well, I would like to start off by saying that I never want you to know about this until further down the road. It isn't that I don't trust you, it's just that this is an SS class secret and I didn't want you to be scared of what I am." "What are you talking about? Nothing could ever make me." Naruto interrupted her. "Hold that thought until you hear what I have to say. As you well know, 13 years ago the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Though no one knows why, it attacked with a vengeance. A lot of people lost their lives that night, both civilians and shinobi. Everyone did their best to fight the beast, but no one was strong enough to stop the Kyuubi. Eventually, the Yondaime Hokage came and fought the beast in a one-on-one fight to the death. I wasn't in control of my actions, as we both know. I am aware of this, but I must explain it to her in a way that she can comprehend. I apologize if I offended you, Kurama." Hinata gave a head nod. "Yeah, and he killed it, just like we learned in the academy." Naruto let out a sigh. Not exactly, the Kyuubi was just a mass of chakra, an existence equivalent to that of a deity, and a deity can't be killed. They can only be tapped in a living host. Just an animal doesn't have the strength to contain the Kyuubi indefinitely, and so the best choice would be a human being, more specifically a shinobi. The thing is, an adult can't hold the Kyuubi either. The host has to be able to grow with the beast while adapting to the massive power locked inside it, and so the only answer left to the whole problem is to seal the Kyuubi into a newly born infant, or as close as one could get. Hinata appeared disoriented. Naruto observed Hinata's expression as she started to recount the events, asking, "But what does this have to do with the dirty looks?" Everyone, as she finally figured it out, she looked down and started to mumble what she had found. Hinata gazed up at Naruto's face, tears welling up at the corners of her eyes. "Your birthday is the same day as the day of Yondaime Hokage-sama's death, the same day the Kyuubi was sealed," she said. Naruto gave her a hug as he lifted up his shirt and pumped chakra through the seal on his stomach. Naruto said, "Yeah, I have the Kyuubi sealed inside of me." Although the seal had changed significantly when he took control of Kurama's chakra, it was still there. As the seal materialized, Hinata glanced at Naruto's abdomen and gave it a light touch, which made Naruto laugh automatically. Does it ever bother you?" Naruto grinned. "Not as much as he used to. The Kyuubi and I have come to an agreement, if you will." Naruto raised Hinata's face to nearly level with his by carefully placing his hands beneath her chin. "Now I told you this so that you would understand my position. I don't want you to feel bad for me whatsoever, though it wasn't my choice. I have accepted my position as a Jinchuriki. I just want you to be happy, and if this makes you not want to be with me anymore, then I understand if..." Hinata buried her head in his chest and gave him a tight hug, interrupting him. "I would never leave you. I want to be with you always. That makes me happy." Hinaheim. Final flashback. As Sakura caught her breath in preparation for her 68th fight with the Hyuga heiress, Naruto watched. "Well, I think this is a good time for a lunch break, Sakura." Hinaheim. "Go get some food and take an hour break. Don't forget to come back here though. We aren't finished for the day. I'll stay here and get some of my own training in." After gathering their belongings and getting ready to leave the field, Hinata approached Naruto and gave him a quick peck on the lips, which made Sakura wide-eyed. "Okay, Naruto-kun. We'll be back in a little bit." Naruto smiled. "Look forward to it." Naruto started talking to Kurama after Hinata and Sakura left. "Okay. I maintained my end of the bargain and only employed basic taijutsu and fuinjutsu during the mission with Hiku and Zabuza. I now want you to teach me the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, which is my father's method." "A deal is a deal. All right, let me first test your knowledge of his technique." Well, based on what he told me, he was able to shunshin to a tri-pronged kunai that had special seals on it. That's almost right. Although he did possess the kunai, he was also able to remove enemies before they even realized he was behind them by implanting seals onto their bodies. His ability to destroy entire armies in a matter of minutes is one of the things that made him so dangerous. That must be the most amazing thing I've ever heard. What a badass my dad was. Yeah, I suppose I should begin teaching you how to duplicate the seal. However, we will need to act quickly on this. This is supposed to be the day that a certain team makes their presence known. If my memory serves me correctly, I should arrive a little early to ensure everything goes smoothly. At Konoha, Sakura and Hinata, both exhausted from their rigorous training over the past few hours, had gone out to dinner together. Although the discussion began with previous missions, Sakura soon began questioning Hinata about her relationship with Naruto from how they first met. Though Hinata made sure to rewrite the events so her father was responsible for caring for the Kumo ninja, to their first kiss, which Hinata again rewrote to make herself appear less aggressive than she actually was. Sakura was very thorough in her questioning and made sure to get all the details. The two left their lunch break after about an hour and started walking toward the front gate in order to get back to their training ground. Hearing the sounds of a fight as they got closer to the gate, they both hurried to the scene, braced for battle, believing there was an intruder. The three Suna ninja they saw as they turned the corner of the building were a tall blonde girl with what appeared to be a huge metal fan on her back, a taller boy with purple face paint, and a wrapped object on his back. The shortest member of their group, a boy with red hair and a big gourd on his back, was the center of their attention. The kanji for love on his forehead and the fact that he was exuding bloodlust, however, were what truly alarmed them. Following their first observation, they discovered the source of the disturbance. A young boy had collided with the tallest member of the group, who was now lifting the boy off the ground by his scarf. The boy's friends were paralyzed with fear and on the ground a few meters back. "Let me go, paint face. I didn't do anything." The boy who had applied the face paint snarled. "You're absolutely right. You haven't done anything, which is why I'm still holding you up. I want you and your friends to apologize to me for making me spill my drink when you bumped into me. No way. Do you even know WHOIAM? There's no way in hell I am going to apologize to some weirdo like you. Suna Nin grinned. You're right, I don't know who you are, and I don't care, and since you decided not to do something so easy, I guess I'll have to teach you some manners. Before his fist could strike the boy, the Suna Nin saw a flash of pink and purple, and the next thing he knew, he was flying backwards while experiencing severe pain in his hands and arms. He noticed a pink-haired girl in a fighting stance with her fist up. When he looked up additionally, he saw a girl with purple hair assisting the boy he was harassing and standing up. The Suna Nin got to his feet with difficulty. You're going to pay for that. You made me bleed. Oh, you are so going to get it now. I just want you to know that you drew first blood. The smallest member of their group grabbed his head at the sight of blood. He collapsed to his knees, panting as if he had just finished a marathon. As the boy's panting worsened, the girl in their group watched in horror. Konkuro. We have to help Gaara quick. Shit, not now. Before they could reach the boy, a flash of yellow stopped the two Suna Nins from running over. Naruto quickly put a piece of paper with the kanji seal on it on the boy's forehead. The boy instantly fell to the ground, unconscious. As soon as the paper touched his head, Naruto got up to confront the other two members of the group after the boy had fallen to the ground. That should keep him in check for a few hours. Take him and go to your assigned apartments for the exam. I will be over later to help Gaara with his seal. Konkuro was silent as he glanced at his younger brother before turning back to Naruto. The silence was broken by his sister. Why should we trust you? And why do you know about his seal? Naruto raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. I assure you, I mean Gaara no harm, and the fact that I managed to render him unconscious without the other side of him coming out means that I have some degree of expertise in sealing. So it seems to me that you don't have much of a choice, but like I said before, I mean Gaara no harm. Tamari glanced at Gaara before turning to Konkuro, who nodded briefly. They took their younger brother in silence and made their way to their quarters. When the Suna Nins eventually left, Hinata, Sakura, and Konohamaru, who had been suspiciously observing them, came up to Naruto. Naruto-kun, do you know those people? Naruto pivoted to face Hinata. I guess you could say that I met them a long time ago, and we were all good friends. But they acted like they had no idea who you were. With his hands behind his head, Naruto tried to appear as innocent as he could. Ha 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 ha. I guess they forgot about me. It was a really long time ago. Sakura was observing the entire scene in an attempt to comprehend the events of the previous few minutes. How can you be so smooth 1 second, convincing those three Suna Nins to trust you within a few seconds, and the next you look like you just got caught up in one of your pranks? In his heart, Naruto enjoyed pretending to be a genius one moment and then a fool the next. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I think you guys are late for your training. You guys go ahead and get started. I have some business I have to take care of. Oh, and Sakura, you can take off your weights this time. That ought to give Hinaheim a bit more trouble this time. The idea of having to spar for a few more hours made the girls pale, especially Hinata, who realized that the fights wouldn't be as one-sided as they had been that morning. While Konohamaru went to meet up with his friends, they returned to the training field in silence with the intention of rescuing Gaara from the tailed beast within him before any more blood touched his consciousness. Naruto turned to follow the Suna Nin back to their apartment. In the Sanagakure house, given that they were the Kazukage's children, Tamari and Konkuro placed Gaara on the couch in the living room of the apartment they were assigned for the Chunin exam, which was a little more opulent. Konkuro's gaze shifted to his sister. Tamari, how long has it been since we have seen Gaara sleep? She gave a headshake. I've never seen him sleep. I remember father telling us that if he ever fell asleep the thing inside of him would come out and kill everyone. Konkuro turned to face Gaara again. That's my point. How the hell is he unconscious right now without it coming out? I can only think that it has something to do with that seal that blonde kid put on him. For whatever reason, he knows about Gaara's position as a host, and I think that he genuinely wants to help Gaara. Tamari laughed. Konkuro, we can't trust anyone from this village, especially not after the mission we were assigned before we came here. It could be a trap. They could know and might try to get to Gaara to stop him from. Stop him from what? Tamari and Konkuro both whirled around, preparing to strike the intruder. They were shocked to see Naruto in the window, appearing to be quite at ease. Naruto raised his hands once more. Don't worry, I know about Gaara's unique predicament as a Jinchuriki. I want to help him, just as much as you two want to help him, though the only difference is that I know how, and as to your mission, well, it's up to you three whether or not you will go through with it after today. Tamari finally broke first, but the two continued to stand their ground for a few more minutes. She kept her composure, but it was clear that tears were welling up in her eyes. Please, Just help Gaara, it isn't his fault. He tries his best to keep the Ichibi under control, but sometimes he can't stop it from taking control of his emotions, she said. Naruto grinned, okay. I will help him, though I will need him awake to begin. Temari nodded, but Kankuro remained vigilant, prepared to defeat Naruto if he made any suspicious moves. Naruto approached Gaara and dispelled the effects while taking the seal off his head. Gaara's eyes opened instantly, and it goes without saying that he was utterly bewildered by what was going on. He eyed each of his siblings as he slowly scanned the room before focusing on Naruto. Gaara sensed Naruto's presence. He didn't look at Gaara the way the others did. His eyes conveyed that he understood the anguish and suffering that Gaara had endured as a Jinchuriki. Gaara rubbed his head and sat up. I had a dream. I haven't had a dream since. As long as I can remember, it was the best feeling I've ever had. I don't know how you managed to suppress Shukaku, but I thank you. Naruto smiled. Well, how would you like to be able to dream more often? In fact, I think I can make it so that you will be able to sleep normally like everyone else. Gaara's eyes grew wide with shock. BB, but how? In triumph, Naruto folded his arms across his chest. I know a bit about seals, and I am confident that I am able to change your situation a bit. Shukaku was sealed inside of you hastily after you were born, and therefore barriers weren't set up to keep the full power of Shukaku in check, so over time he has been able to overpower your subconsciousness to the extent of being able to control some of your violent urges. But with the Hake no Fuin Shiki, you will not only be free of his influence, but you should be able to draw on his power at will, though the more power you take, the more he gains a grasp over your consciousness. What Naruto was saying left the three speechless. He claimed that he could solve all of Gaara's issues and grant him freedom from the vicious beast that was imprisoned inside of him. Kankuro, however, was not as quick to accept Naruto's claims. And how can we trust you? Let's say everything you said is true. Why would you want to even help us? We aren't even from the same village. What is in it for you? Naruto gave a shrug. Nothing, I simply want to change the fate of a fellow Jinchuriki for the better. That struck close to home. Temari and Kankuro alternated their gazes between Naruto and Gaara. Although their brother was certain that the claim was true, they were unsure if the person in front of them was telling the truth. Kankuro, Temari, I believe him. I know that he has known the same kind of pain I have gone through. Though we have walked different paths, I accept your proposal. Gaara's eyes widened with perplexity. Naruto gave a sheepish laugh. Oh wow, I can't believe I haven't told you my name yet. I just got really excited. I guess I'm Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konoha. Naruto-san, please, do whatever you have to do. Okay. I will create a seal that will hold Shukaku and allow you to draw on his power when you are in a pinch. Much like mine does. I warn you though, this will be painful. That's okay. I'm not afraid of pain. Naruto nodded and told Gaara to lie on his back with his shirt off while he started to gather chakra in his hands. Temari and Kankuro saw the Hake no Fuin Shiki shimmer into being as Naruto covered Gaara's stomach with his hands. Naruto's gaze remained fixed on Gaara's abdomen. This is only the raw seal itself. I'm going to try and put Shukaku into the seal, though I doubt he will go peacefully. Gaara, we are about to fight against Shukaku. You have to force him into the cage while I seal it closed. After he is behind the cage, it will be over and you will be free, but before that, give me a quick second. A strange orange marking appeared around each of Naruto's eyes, and the three siblings watched as he sat down cross-legged. A few seconds later, Naruto got to his feet, walked back to Gaara's side, and touched his forehead. He answered the question that was beginning to form in everyone's mind before anyone could ask. I just gathered a bit of chakra to help us when we fight Shukaku. Now, I'm warning you, Gaara. You have to fight him with everything you have. If you give in, he will be able to take control of your mind, and at that point there will be nothing I can do to bring you back. Gaara gave a nod. I understand. Ready to battle Shukaku. Naruto focused as he started to explore Gaara's subconscious. He opened his eyes to find himself in the middle of a vast desert that seemed to go on forever. Looking for something in the vast desert, Naruto started to turn this way and that. Alright. How can I now assist him? I worry about you a lot sometimes. Brad, just pay attention to Shukaku's chakra and Shunshin to it. It shouldn't be difficult because there aren't many large chakra signatures. Naruto gave a HN. That was very Sasuke-like. Naruto looked everywhere until he discovered what he was seeking. He flew miles across the desert after performing a few seals and ended up in a sizable cave. Although the gates were still open, he could see the prison he had established at the far end of the cave. He turned to see Gaara standing in front of him with a little shield of sand. Gasping for air and covered in blood, he discovered Shukaku laughing uncontrollably across from him. Who would have thought that you would be stupid to come down here alone? Ha 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 ha. I can finally get out of here. I think I'll start off by killing your damn siblings. Ha 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 ha. Shukaku was thrown by his tail and smashed into the far side of the cave as Naruto yelled. Who said Gaara was alone? and Sunshine behind him. Shukaku, regrettably, was not overly alarmed by this and quickly got back on his feet. He glanced around the room before turning to face the victim of his earlier battle, who had now passed out and was receiving medical attention from some of Naruto's cage bunchins. "Who the hell are you? And what kind of idiot wears orange around his eyes? You look like one of those damn trannies, ha 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 ha. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, Jinchuriki of Kurama, also known as the Kyuubi, and future Hokage of Konohagakure." Shukaku was immediately silenced when the Kyuubi was mentioned. "KK Kurama? You're lying, you have to be, he's dead, he can't be here, he can't." In an attempt to kill Naruto as soon as possible, Shukaku started throwing enormous spheres of compressed air at him even in Senin mode. Sage mode. Naruto had to focus completely to avoid all of the attacks. "What the devil is happening, Kurama? To put it simply, I was a complete jerk when I was younger, especially towards Shu. We would frequently argue for weeks on end, but it was more about me pushing him to the point of death than it was about a straightforward altercation. He hasn't moved on yet, I suppose. I believe I now understand why he is acting so spitefully. Gaara and Shukaku don't seem to be able to get along the way we do." Shukaku's tail whirled around the room, flinging Naruto into the opposite side of the wall while he was still avoiding the air bubbles as if nothing had happened. Naruto got back up, although I barely noticed it. "It seems like my Senin mode has gotten stronger. I can't keep this going any longer because Gaara's mental health could suffer more the longer it goes on." Naruto started using Kurama's chakra. After dropping Senin mode, he quickly took on the appearance of the Rakudo Senin, cloaked in a cloak of yellow flames. "So it is true. You do have that bastard in you. Bring him out here, I'll kill him, I'll humiliate him like he humiliated me, I'll make him suffer." With a sigh, Naruto extended his hand. "Sorry Shukaku, but I can't let you take control of Gaara's psyche anymore, just leave him in peace." Naruto's outstretched arm suddenly produced multiple arms of chakra, which then started to create multiple Rasen shurikens. He was once more behind Shukaku. A moment later, this time, Naruto threw him toward the cage. After grabbing his tail with his free arm, Shukaku got back up as though he didn't feel it, just like the first time. Shukaku chuckled. "You are going to have to try a whole hell of a lot harder than that if you want to beat me." At Shukaku's feet, Naruto emerged. "That was my plan." Shukaku gazed down in amazement. The child appeared to be able to teleport across the room, but before he could respond, 3 Rasen shurikens struck him with enough force to knock a Biju to the ground. As the blast radius started to grow, Naruto leapt back. He started flashing hand seals right away, and as soon as he reached the gate's exterior, he slammed his palms to the ground and exclaimed, "Hake no Fuin Shiki." Despite being clearly shaken, Shukaku started to recover from the attack. Damn you, don't think this is over. I'll find a way out of here. Mark my words, I will." "Hey, better Biju than you have tried," was Naruto's final retort as he assumed Gaara's unconscious form and started severing his connection to Gaara's mind, thereby ending the sealing process. "Watch it, brat." Gasping for air, Naruto and Gaara both leapt to their feet simultaneously after exchanging glances. Temari and Kankuro approached Gaara and assisted him in sitting up on the couch. Temari was unable to control her curiosity any longer. "So, did it, work? Well, Gaara, how do you feel?" Naruto asked after glancing at her from Gaara. I feel great, better than I have in a long time. It's so quiet. Wait, it's quiet. I can't hear him anymore." Gaara started crying so hard that he could hardly hear what was being said. Temari turned to face Naruto, who nodded quickly, and she too started crying as she embraced her brother. Naruto turned to face Kankuro, who smiled warmly at him before embracing him as well. Gaara broke off the embrace after a few minutes and approached Naruto while standing. "Uzumaki Naruto, today you have given me the best gift one could possibly give. Freedom. I am eternally grateful, and if you should ever find yourself in need of assistance, not only will myself and my siblings be there to provide support, but I will do my best to make sure all of Sanagakure will welcome you with open arms." Temari and Kankuro turned to stare at the ground when Sanagakure was mentioned. "Thank you, Gaara. Now, I think we all need to talk." After a few hours at Training Field 29, satisfied, Naruto made his way to the training field. "Even though I approached it a little differently this time, I'm happy I was able to assist Gaara sooner. In all honesty, I gave saving him from the darkness a lot of thought over the years, and I believe this was the best approach. It's true that he will eventually learn to harness Shukaku's power for his own benefit without getting engrossed in it. Naruto, you make me proud once more." "Oh my god, stop being so sentimental about me, Kurama." A rare sight, Naruto quickly made his way to the training field, making sure to conceal himself in the trees and blend in with the surroundings. He watched as Hinata and Sakura engaged in a furious duel. Although Naruto could still make out faint smiles on both of their faces, it seemed as though they were engaged in a life or death struggle in addition to being covered in sweat and dirt. Sakura appeared to be in worse shape overall, with multiple burn marks from chakras on her arms and legs. Additionally, Hinata was covered in dirt and a variety of scrapes and bruises. It was clear that some of Sakura's vicious blows had made contact. After Hinata struck Sakura, causing her to drop to one knee, the yielding position of a spar, Naruto made his presence known. Both of the girls fell to the ground, panting and out of breath. As soon as the spar was over, both girls looked up at him as he clapped his hands in praise as he entered the clearing. That was amazing, guys. Sakura, you must have pushed Hinaheim really far to get her so tired. I guess those weights really do the trick when it comes to speed. Sakura grunted back, too exhausted to respond in any meaningful way. Well, I guess I should give you guys some soldier pills so you can make it back to Konoha. It's starting to get late, so I think we all should head back. From the looks of it, you guys have really been going at it, so I guess we can call it a day for now. Both girls got ready to leave after taking the pills, but as they did, they turned around and waited for Naruto to accompany them. As she waited for Naruto to accept her hand, Hinata extended it. Naruto-kun, aren't you coming back with us? Naruto gave a headshake. No, I haven't gotten a chance to train myself today, so I think I'm going to stay out here for a bit and do some special one-on-one practice with some cage bunchins. I will be by the Hyuga compound later tonight though, so you can head on back and rest until then. With a nod, Hinata and Sakura started to return to the village. Alright, it's time for my training now. Kurama, please teach me how to perform multiple elemental combinations with less chakra usage. Well, demonstrate to me which jutsu you can currently execute, and I'll observe your chakra reserves to determine the most cautious technique for each one. Right. Imagining a swarm of enemies charging at him, Naruto focused his chakra and bounded forward into the clearing. Futon. Futojoki no Jutsu. Boil release. Boiling vapor technique. Naruto's lungs erupted into a cloud of steam. The steam immediately started to crackle and explode as the water inside started to evaporate, regardless of whether it came into contact with grass or trees. Whoever was affected by the Keki Genkai must have been in excruciating pain. You're not even close to being done yet, brat, so keep going. Naruto gathered chakra in his palms and decided to clear the steam. Ranton. Reiza Sakasu no Jutsu. Storm release. Laser circus technique. Trees and boulders alike were decimated as more than a dozen beams of crackling lightning burst from Naruto's palms and exploded upon contact. The training ground was now covered in enormous craters that gave the impression that a conflict between two villages had occurred nearby. So far, so good. It appears that your strong suits are Suiten and Futon, but Raiden uses a little more chakra than the others. I suppose it's time to give Doden and Kaden a try. Gathering chakra in his lungs once more, Naruto leapt into the air with a roar of lava. Naruto exclaimed. Yoden. Yogen Ryu no Jutsu. Lava release. Lava stream technique. The field was covered in a half-foot thick layer of lava, turning the lush green terrain into a molten furnace. Yes, it appears that Doden and Kaden use the most chakra because they are your weakest elements. Before you fall into the lava and burn to death, use one final jutsu to cool it all down. With a mental nod, Naruto inhaled deeply as he prepared to employ his final jutsu of the day. Hyuden. Burazado Raijingu no Jutsu. Ice release. Raging blizzard technique. The lava on the ground was instantly hardened by the enormous amount of freezing air that Naruto ejected. The duration of the jutsu was approximately 30 seconds, which was sufficient to cause Naruto to gasp for air upon landing on the newly constructed ground. Well done, Naruto. Based on what I observed, you managed to maintain a comparatively high level of chakra control. While Naruto, did you erect seals around the training area to keep everyone else out? When Naruto realized what Kurama was implying, he went pale. He turned to see Kakashi standing in the clearing, his bare Sharingan eye nearly protruding from his head. Kakashi raised his pointer finger at Naruto and stammered, How? Why, you just used 4 advanced nature Keki Genkais. That can't be possible, it just can't. Calm down, Kakashi-sensei. I can, explain? Rewind to earlier that morning. Kakashi was leaving the village gates to meet Sasuke for one-on-one instruction on how to make the most of his new Sharingan. He saw a brief altercation between Sakura and Gaara's group, with Hinata standing behind her, as he turned the corner leading to the village entrance. Well, I wonder if I should step in. I suppose I'll wait a little while longer before I. When the smallest of the group grabbed his head and started yelling a blood-curdling scream, he lost his train of thought. Kakashi was about to leap forward and investigate after raising his headband, but he was stopped when Naruto showed up and sealed. The young redhead Kakashi could read their lips with his Sharingan, but he was too far away to hear what they were saying. Well, I believe Sasuke could get by on his own for the day. I should follow Naruto and find out exactly what's happening. He wants to help these Suna nin, but how? As he followed Naruto to the Suna team's apartment, Kakashi was taken aback when he heard Naruto reveal the S-class secret that he was also a Jinchuriki and start discussing making a seal for the Shukaku. Naruto, how on earth are you doing this? It's not enough to simply tell everyone you meet that you possess the Kyuubi. Hold on, how is he aware of himself? As Naruto made a perfect duplicate of his own seal on the redhead's stomach, Kakashi kept watching Naruto started pouring chakra into the seal after a short while, and he did so for almost 5 minutes. Both the redhead and Naruto were motionless as Kakashi watched, but he saw the redhead start to display a number of seemingly impromptu scrapes and bruises. When the two young teenagers woke up, gasping for air, Kakashi was ready to step in. But what he heard next made him go pale. Naruto listened to the three siblings for 30 minutes as they described a complex scheme that Orochimaru had devised to invade Konoha during the Chunin exam finals and fight the Hokage to the death. Though he started to suspect that Naruto was already aware of the invasion, Kakashi made a mental note to have Naruto discuss what he had learned tonight with the Hokage in the coming days. Following Naruto as he headed towards one of the less frequented training grounds, Kakashi was pleasantly surprised to see Sakura sparring fiercely with what looked to be Hinata. So, this is how Sakura rapidly gained strength and speed. The fact that Naruto was able to persuade her to begin training as a true kunoichi is impressive. He heard Naruto mention receiving his own special training as he watched the two girls leave. Alright, maybe I can get some answers now, as Kakashi watched Naruto demonstrate cage-level jutsu, but not just any jutsu, Kekkei Genkei Jutsu. The responses he received only made him wonder more. Now Kakashi was still trembling a little from the shock of what he had just witnessed. You had better, and it needs to be damn good, or I will personally go the Hokage with what I just saw. Sheepishly, Naruto rubbed his head. Well, actually I was meaning to talk to him too, so I guess that would be easier than having to explain this twice. Silently, the two made their way to the Hokage tower. As soon as he arrived, Kakashi raised his headband to demonstrate his seriousness and demanded a meeting with the Hokage because they knew better than to obstruct Kakashi when his Sharingan was out. The Anbu guards began to perspire behind their masks. Although he was unaware of the purpose of the meeting, the Hokage gave them serious looks as they entered Hiruzen's office and knew it would be a serious one. Kakashi, Naruto, what is this all about? I was in a very important meeting with the council about. Kakashi took a step forward and made a little bow. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but there is something that Naruto needs to tell us. Hiruzen's eyebrow went up. Naruto, what is it? Naruto extended his hand. 1 second, Oji-san. I have to put seals around the room. No one can hear what I am about to say. Naruto proceeded to each side of the room and sealed the door, every window, and every wall. Naruto channeled chakra into them once they were all in position, and the room was quickly secured against any intrusion, including eavesdroppers and Byakugan users attempting to peer in. Naruto inhaled deeply after sealing the room. Okay, so wow, this is a lot more awkward than I thought it would be, hehehe. After a few minutes, Naruto was able to persuade the two men that, with Kurama's assistance, he had created a rip in time and had returned to his infant self in order to prevent the world from being destroyed. That appeared to be the most difficult aspect, and he was certain that he would be taken directly to Ibiki for questioning if Naruto hadn't described a few specific incidents in such vivid detail. Naruto started narrating the events from their point of view after they were fully persuaded. He discussed the Chunin exams, the Sound and Sand invasion of Konoha, Tsunade's election as the Godem Hokage, Sasuke's abandonment, his encounter with Akatsuki, his training with Jiraiya, the Akatsuki's search for Jinchuriki, Pain's destruction of Konoha, and the Fourth Shinobi War. As the conclusion, however, Naruto took great care to avoid bringing up Obito because he knew Kakashi wouldn't be happy about that. Their response was exactly as Naruto had anticipated. They were completely shocked, in part because of how Naruto had subdued the Kyuubi and in part because they knew that the world would basically end in a few years, but because Naruto was able to vividly describe every event, they couldn't help but believe him. It was mostly quiet after Naruto finished recounting what had happened until Hiruzen interrupted. So let me get this straight, you came back to prevent the completion of the Eternal Tsukuyomi by this leader of Akatsuki. Who is it that is the leader who could have the strength to control all of the Biju at once? Naruto hesitated just a moment. It wasn't a complete lie. Obito is actually carrying out Madara's will, so for the time being, it's okay for them to be one and the same. It's Madara Uchiha. He survived his encounter with the Shodai Hokage and is now hiding away somewhere. Building up the Akatsuki in preparation for their Biju hunt, he managed to steal some of Hashirama's cells and is using them to prolong his life. Kakashi was still in shock, saying, "Madara, to think he is alive after all this time." While Sarutobi agreed with Kakashi, he was more focused on the here and now. "I want to bring our attention to this supposed invasion of Konoha by the Sound and Suna. And my supposed death. How are we able to trust you on this information?" Naruto started by recounting his meeting with Gaara and their conversation following his successful sealing of Shukaku regarding the invasion. Kakashi was able to confirm Naruto's information this time when Naruto described how he sealed Shukaku. The two men in the room were taken aback by how easily a 13-year-old could control a Biju. The Hokage quickly regained his composure to speak once more. So Orochimaru decides to make his move during the finals of the Chunin exams. "I feel for the Kage too. His death is unfortunate. We should, however, be able to use this treachery against Orochimaru, and when the Suna Nins find out they won't be willing to participate in this supposed invasion." Naruto gave a nod of agreement. "Right, this is part of the reason I made myself known to Gaara earlier. I also informed them of the Kage's death, and they took it surprisingly well, though I think they never really had any special attachments to their father. They assured me that they would inform all of the Suna Nins of Orochimaru's betrayal, and so when the time comes to attack they will begin attacking their unsuspecting allies." Hiruzen grinned. "Thank you, Naruto. It's good to know that Konoha has more than one person protecting it from the shadows, though. I wonder why you decided to come forward to me now." Naruto started to move a little. "Well, I wouldn't have told you about my situation until a little later, but Kakashi stumbled upon me training." Seeking to understand what Naruto was trying to convey, Hiruzen cast a curious glance at Kakashi. Kakashi gave the inquisitive glances his best answer. "Well, I personally witnessed Naruto performing elemental jutsu. The thing is, they were from 4 different Keki Genkais." The Hokage's pipe dropped from his mouth as his eyes grew wide. It took him almost 5 minutes of staring at Naruto before he was able to gather his thoughts enough to talk. Naruto, would you care to explain how you were able to do this? I am also curious as to which ones you use." Naruto smiled. "Well, to answer your second question, I used Futen, Ranten, Yoten, and Haiden. I think I should let Kurama explain how I was able to do these. I never really had a knack to the technical sides of jutsu anyways." The two men merely nodded at Naruto's final statement because they were still in disbelief after learning that the genin in front of them was able to use some of the most deadly Keki Genkai in existence. It wasn't until Naruto's eyes became red and his pupils narrowed that the words truly hit home. Well, it is good to see you again, Sandame, still alive and kicking, I see. Kyuubi, I don't enjoy meeting on such terms again after all these years. Don't be rude, my name is Kurama and you will address me as such. I am not the same mindless beast that attacked Konoha 13 years ago." Although Hiruzen was surprised by Kurama's request, he quickly understood that he would have to comply with it in order to obtain the information he desired. "Very well, I apologize, Kurama-san. That's better. Now to get on with the explanation. Well, you both know that each person has only 1 or 2 affinities towards a certain element, such as this brat has an affinity towards futon. While you both have different affinities to different elements, that being the case, how is it that either of you are able to use jutsu of different elements besides those of your affinities?" It was Kakashi who spoke first. "Well, that is because though our affinities are different, we are able to learn different elemental jutsu to a minimal degree, though the jutsu itself would be weaker and use much more chakra than the elemental jutsu that matched out affinities." "Correct. Now tell me, what would be the case if a certain individual was able to wield a chakra pool several times that of the strongest Kage, and he had a teacher that had been alive long enough to know the ins and outs of each element?" The two men gazed in wonder. "You can't mean..." "Yes, from the age of 4 Naruto has been undergoing intense training in each and every element, learning how to manipulate each one and training in the advanced jutsus in each element. By the time he entered the academy, he would easily be able to defeat everyone in this village, even you, Sandame." Kakashi sank into a chair close by. "Dear Kami, but that still doesn't explain how he can use the Keki Genkai I saw him use. Like I said before, Kakashi, I know the ins and outs of each element. What is lava exactly? It is simply a combination of rock and fire storms. Those are just a mixture of violent winds and water with a certain amount of electrical charge to disrupt the atmosphere around the water droplets. This kind of logic is true for each Keki Genkai. That is based solely on the manipulation of elements." Hiruzen started assembling the parts. So all Naruto was really doing was combining the elements in a specific way. Exactly. Under any other circumstance, this would be impossible, as anyone else wouldn't have nearly enough chakra to perform the necessary combinations. So the fact that Naruto is able to do this leads me to believe that all those Keki Genkais are as the special trait to have more than one affinity, and having an innate ability to combine those specific elements. It just so happened that those traits managed to stay in the same family long enough to be associated to that Keki Genkai. Of course, this means that Naruto can't replicate anything that has to do with physical alterations to the body, such as the Sharingan or Byakugan. He is limited to the manipulation of elements, though that in itself is good enough. I have several other theories about jutsu in general, but I won't say them for now anyway. I'm finished here. Naruto can explain anything else you want to know. Naruto's eyes went back to their typical blue, and Hiruzen and Kakashi began studying him. So, is there anything else that you guys want to know? I am pretty tired from using so much chakra today, and I only have a few more days to prepare for the Chunin exams. I also promised Hina-chan that I would meet up with her tonight. Leaning back in his chair, Hiruzen tried to process everything he had just learned. Sigh. Yes, Naruto, you may go. You have given Kakashi and myself much to think about. I will hold an emergency meeting with the council to prepare for the invasion. I will also secretly meet with this Gaara to discuss Suna's new role in the operation. After saying, "Thanks Oji-san," Naruto turned to face his Chunin leader and bowed. "See ya Kakashi." "Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I thought that you were training Sasuke today?" Kakashi leapt from the seat. "Oh crap. I apologize Sarutobi-sama, but I have to leave." Kakashi leapt out the window as fast as his feet would carry him, and both Naruto and Hiruzen laughed at him. Soon after, Naruto arrived, eager to meet Hinata and take a shower. Over the course of the following few days, Naruto trained Sakura and Hinata, giving them advice on their taijutsu techniques and, much to Sakura's dismay, increasing the weights she was wearing following their departure. Naruto would practice his Keki Genkai class ninjutsu, attempting to use less and less chakra with each move, though he was making slow progress. Before long, he was standing in front of the building where Sakura and Sasuke would be taking the written part of the Chunin exams. "Well guys, looks like this is it. Sasuke Teme. If you are scared we can still back out now. Shut it Dobi. I'm going in there with or without you, and I'm not going to leave until I am one step closer to being a Chunin. Ha 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 ha. I wouldn't have it any other way."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.